Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BI Livecast series. My name is Jamie Chow, and I'm one of the content and community leads here at Brand Innovators. Welcome to today's livecast on fashion and beauty marketing. Today is really special, and I'm thrilled to be here to kick off this event. We've got a phenomenal event with an awesome lineup of marketers coming to us virtually from companies like Ulta Beauty, Madison Reed, Henkel, and Sperry. We'd like to thank all of our marketers for taking the time to be here and present with us today, and give a big shout out to our sponsors for making this all possible. And last but not least, we'd like to thank our audience for taking the time to tune in with us. Remember, we are live. If you're tuning in via Zoom, you can use the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen to ask questions, and we'll get to them at the end of each session. You can also use the chat widget to connect with attendees and discuss the event in real time. With this, I'd love to welcome to our stage our first group of speakers. We have Michelle Posinsky, VP of Digital Innovation from Ulta Beauty, and moderating the session will be Mandy Thomason, RVP of Enterprise Sales from Yelp. Hi, Mandy.
Hi, Jamie.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Great. I think Michelle, there she is.
There's Michelle.
Hey, Mandy, how are you? I am wanting to get my background set.
Yeah, I think I know sometimes when we're live here, things don't always go as planned, but I think it looks great, Michelle. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm looking here at the, yeah, do you want me to just, maybe what I can do is, should we just go ahead? I'm looking and I'm not seeing the one fill. I did get to the background, but I'm not seeing the filter. So
yeah, let's go ahead since we're already here and ready to go and we've got some folks watching. Let's just go ahead and get started. And
perfect.
I think everything looks great.
Awesome.
So
I'll let you guys get to it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Jamie. So for those of you who don't know, Michelle is the Vice President of Digital Innovation at Ulta Beauty. During her 10 years at Ulta Beauty, she's managed guest-facing systems, and 4 years ago, she launched the Digital Innovation team. Her team is global, and so she has quite a few offices in the US, as well as one in Uruguay. So that was a fun conversation. Michelle is a technologist at heart, and we're thrilled to share with the brands and marketers listening in some of the digital innovation projects and marketing strategies that she's implemented to help connect with consumers. So thanks so much, Michelle, for taking the time to talk to all of us today. We're really excited that you're here.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mandy. And, and I also want to thank, the Brand Innovators team for having us a part of this panel. We're always kind of thrilled to share our story. And Mandy, to yourself and Christine McConnell, who also helped, kind of get leading up to this, really appreciate all the help. So very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, so we've had quite a few, as you just mentioned, quite a few prep discussions to make sure we could create some great content for today. And one of those discussions was around the digital innovation team and how you use virtual try-on tools. I played around with them a little bit myself, but there was the Shade Finder, there's Glam Lab, how you use those tools to actually enhance the in-store experience. And so we were hoping you would tell us a little bit more about that, because I think the way that you're using these tools is maybe a little different than some folks would expect.
Perfect. So we're delighted. We're always thrilled to kind of talk about Glam Lab, which is our virtual try-on tool, as you say. One of the components of Glam Lab is a shade finder. And what that means is it helps to analyze your image and understand your tone, your skin tone and undertone. What we think, though, is really pretty cool about this tool, and one of the ways that it has really evolved, is that it's not just a digital tool for you to, for one, it certainly is a digital tool, right? But what we found is that it's not only for our guests, but it also is for our beauty advisors in our physical stores. And the reason that we say that and kind of how that can come to life in the physical stores is that it creates a little bit more of a two-way conversation, more collaboration. And the example is, if a guest is coming into the physical store one of the things that the beauty advisors in the store will actually do if they're looking for a foundation is they'll encourage them to use the shade finder. One, because that educates our guests as well. It educates them on their tone and undertone. And it's really not as easy as just saying, well, here's your tone, undertone. A beauty advisor and a beauty expert is going to know that, but oftentimes we might like a shade lighter or darker. So one of the cool capabilities with the shade finder is that the beauty advisor in the store can have the guest do an analysis, find their particular tone, undertone. If they want to go a couple of shades darker or lighter, they kind of know that range, and then they can work back with the beauty advisor, and within the breadth of the assortment in the store, they can have the beauty advisor then suggest, here's products in the store that you might want to take a look at that will meet your needs. So we think it's really, it's a great tool because, again, it helps educate the guest. Now they've got this cool tool. They know what their tone and undertone is. They can look for, the variety of foundations that really might look great on them. And again, it creates a little bit more of it's education, and then there's collaboration in the physical store.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And we talked a little bit about how these tools have been around for quite a bit. Obviously, this is an area where COVID, you said there was a significant increase in the usage of the tools, but as consumers are getting back to store, that is where the advisors are picking up and really using the tools to help find those shades. Can you talk a little bit more about during COVID, when suddenly these tools were being used more regularly? I know you talked a little bit about how it was all hands on deck in the Ulta stores to get the products logged and cataloged. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. Maybe one thing for sure, right, is that, at Ulta, Ulta Beauty puts the guest at the center of everything that we do. And, there can be nothing more personal, more personalized than your visual characteristics. We all look different. We're all beautiful, right? We always kind of put the guest at the center of everything. And tools, again, like virtual try-on, we've had virtual try-on in Glam Lab since 2016. And the pandemic, we all know that it accelerated digital. It was great to have a tool like Glam Lab because one of the things that Mandy, you and I were talking about is that with the pandemic, stores were closed, but they were still able to experiment, thinking about the guest. We still wanted them to have ways that they could experiment and learn and enjoy beauty. So something like Glam Lab, it's not just shade finder, but it also, again, does a visual analysis, and it's going to understand your lips, your eyes. You can put eyeshadows on, lipsticks, lip glosses, etc., right? So it creates this, this digital experimentation. And with the pandemic, stores were closed. It was still a way for them to experiment, kind of find shades that they liked. When stores opened, right, one of the things that happened when stores opened because of the pandemic is we no longer had testers. So testers in beauty were not there. But again, and by the way, testers may not have been there, but when the doors opened, the guests came back. In the beauty industry, these are highly engaged beauty enthusiasts. So they want, they basically want to shop wherever beauty is. They came back. They still were able to experiment and play through the use of Glam Lab. Another thing to think about is even when testers came back, if we think about how this flows after the pandemic, even when testers came back, there are many brands that don't have testers, maybe really small brands, mass brands. So this provides a real way for everyone to, get accessibility to this tool. And then as a result of the pandemic and knowing that this tool was so useful, one of the things that we ensured is we leveraged a lot of the beauty advisors from the field during that time to help us calibrate, what we call calibrate the product or get it ready for try on, because you have to know the exact color. You want to know the texture. So items are calibrated. And what was great about that is that then we basically built product champions for Glam Lab and for this tool. and in many ways even had a deeper, our beauty advisors had a deeper understanding of how this tool could be used by our guests when they're, when they're looking for beauty, whether it's out of the store or in store. It's a tool that's just become, it's really even become supercharged as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, I love that. I like so much. I mean, seeing a tool like that, you think it's all about driving e-commerce, but I love the fact that you're creating digital innovation for the actual in-store experience and driving consumers in store to use both the beauty advisor, but then also these digital tools. I want to touch on something you just mentioned. You mentioned some smaller brands that don't necessarily have testers. And so just thinking about that, one of the things we talked about is how Ulta Beauty's unique value prop was marrying larger brands like Estee Lauder, L'Oreal, with some of the smaller, more emerging brands like Juvia, Place, and Tula. So it's kind of similar to Yelp. We work with small local businesses, but then we're also working with large multi-location businesses like Ulta Beauty. I'm curious how you use digital innovation beside the Glam Lab, which is a way that you're kind of exposing people to other smaller brands. What are some other ways that you're using digital innovations to help with both small and large brands?
Well, one of the things, that I would say is that, there's a couple of things from a digital innovation perspective. One, I kind of like to say that, we're the equal opportunity beauty retailer. So it's in our DNA, right? This breadth of the assortment, high, low, right? Mass brands, prestige, masstige, right? Across all categories. So, very much what we want is, again, kind of thinking about the guest and putting the guest at the center of what we do. We want them to have, to be able to experience any brand that they're interested in. And we want that accessibility to be there. Many larger organizations, larger brands have accessibility to a lot of these tools like virtual try-on, where a small brand may not. They may not have, maybe, they don't have the capability to build something like that. One of the things that from a digital innovation perspective is, our motto is all things beauty. We used to say, all things beauty all in one place, and we've changed that. It's, evolved to be all things beauty all in their world. And when we think about digital innovation, we want our tools to be able to be leveraged by all of our brands. So not only are we making the beauty products and the services available, but we like to think that we're making our tools available too. So Glam Lab, again, in all of the color cosmetics, we've calibrated everything so that the guest can experience brands like Tula, Juvia's Place, a mass brand, or they can experience Lancome, Estee Lauder, Chanel, whatever the case may be, they have that same experience. And other things that we're doing is, when we think about from an innovation perspective, we're using data science. We're obviously looking at a lot of the data that is unique to our guests, and we're personalizing the experience. But we're doing that, again, kind of equal opportunity beauty retailer. We're doing that, we're looking at all of the data, and then we're surfacing across, the breadth of the brands within a particular category that a guest may be looking for. We're surfacing things like information, reviews is one example, and we're showing people, what guests are saying. So we're using our capability related to data science to personalize the experience, across all brands. So personalization tools like virtual try-on. There's many things that anything that we do, we want them to be accessible to, and to actually provide some of these tools to all of our brands.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's a huge benefit of being one of your partners. So just speaking about data, how do you internally measure the success of these tools? Like, how do you know if your team has hit the right product with some of your innovations?
Right. What I would say is, not to, everybody may be waiting for some great, great number or something. We generally don't, we don't get into particulars like that. But what I would say is, for everyone and kind of for the audience, right, it's what you would expect. We're certainly going to look at something like, if you think about, a digital experience or a physical experience in the store, it's how many people are shopping and then placing orders, right? Transactions are certainly key. It's no different online and in digital properties. How many people looked at something? How many people put something into their cart? How many actually converted and placed an order, right? So we look at things, right? Digitally, we can see what are you looking at? What are you interested in, right? We look at click-throughs, emails. Have they clicked on something? Did they come from a location like Yelp? So did they see something out in the internet and then they were directed to us? We measure all of that. No different with our new tools. The question really is, well, was it beneficial for our guest? Did the guest, was this something that really helped the guest? And so what we do is we measure things like, what are the number of try-ons, as an example? How many try-ons, if someone is using the Glam Lab tool, it's kind of like, like a try-on version of Browse. They're looking at something, they're trying it on. So we measure number of try-ons, we measure things like number of shades tried on. And then of course, we also look at if they tried something on, did they add it to bag and did they convert, right? So we measure those things. We certainly, you and I talked about the fact that we certainly would have the capability, right? If we knew you, you were a part of our loyalty program and you were using the try-on experience, again, as an example, you tried something on and then a week later, you came into our store and made a purchase, we could connect that. So it's, transactions, but I think one of the really important things for us in measurement is, do we see the level of engagement, right? Do we see that of the guests using Glam Lab, other than just, are they buying something? Of course, we're a retailer, we want that, but what's the level of engagement? And that's why if we look at the number of shades that they try on, it's so important. Because digitally, you can try on a lot of shades. And if you think about that, when you convert that to the physical environment, the way that we do it, we beauty enthusiasts, is we're going to physically maybe swatch it. We might use, an applicator, we might try it on, and that takes time. So this way, it's just, again, we're going to measure the engagement, and what we would say is digitally, it's probably much more efficient to try on more of a variety across brands very efficiently.
So through the Glam Lab that I was trying on green and red and black and blue eyeliners, all different ones recently, just to have a little bit of fun there. So it really is, it's a very fun tool. So I encourage everyone to give it a go. I wanted to pivot a little bit, Michelle, and talk about, in beauty, there's so much trend forecasting. I think it's a lot of fun to kind of try and figure out what the next best and big thing is going to be. And interestingly, we have tons of search data at Yelp. So we're always looking at what consumers are bringing up and searching for and kind of able to predict a little bit the trends. So in our recent beauty trends forecast, we started to see that searches for services like glow facials and body contouring were up 66 and 35% year over year. And what the report showed overall is that there was a real increased appetite for non-invasive face and body procedures. I'm just wondering, is that what you're seeing at Ulta? Or are you seeing other trends? If you could speak a little bit to that, and then how you think about creating digital innovation experiences to meet those demands.
Sure, and I wish I'm not some of my merchant friends were basically with me. I don't know that I'm going to be the best one to. That you and I, right? We're not here to. We'd love to talk about what is body contouring and and glow facials, right? So this isn't a class on just on glow facials. We are doing fashion and beauty marketing, but. For sure, what's been emerging, right, is there really has been, it's been coming and it's getting stronger, the connection between beauty and health. Beauty and health, really are converging, and what does that mean? Well, beauty enthusiasts, people are beginning to understand that what they put in their bodies, right, what they expose themselves to, the environment, kind of everything around them, that really contributes to their beauty, right? And, their level of health and how healthy they are and what that definition is, right? It could be, this could be even be, kind of mind, mind and body, right? I mean, kind of all of these things really get wrapped into health and beauty. And so how this shows up in beauty and how it shows up, for Ulta are things like ingestibles, right? And we have, one of the things that you could, you can find on Ulta.com is we have a wellness shop. And the wellness shop is going to kind of bring, basically bring to the forefront the items and the brands that we have that are, again, they're more than maybe what we put, externally on ourselves to look good, feel good, right? But also things like an ingestible, something that's good for our hair, something that's good for our skin, something that's just a multivitamin, right? Topicals that could be good, again, for, the health of our skin, or super moisturizing. So wellness and, for sure, wellness, health, and beauty intersecting, right? These are really, these are trends that we see. We see wearables that kind of connect with having all the biometric information about people, that people want to connect some of the information from their wearables into their everyday, so that if they know kind of maybe, the level of the amount of water that they're consuming, maybe that they can determine that they have a level of moisture that other people may not. And maybe that tells them the type of skin moisturizer to use. Wellness for sure. And then what I would say is what has been deemed kind of clean beauty, we call it conscious beauty. So conscious beauty it's all about the ingredients. I mean, more and more in our everyday lives, science is basically just, taking over. And the formulation, how a product is made, the level of sustainability, the level of ingredients that are in a part of that are a part of a formulation that are good for the planet, good for the person, right? This is really, it's been a theme, but it's getting stronger and stronger. If anything, in the US, in much of the rest of the world, from a beauty perspective, they have strong regulations on the ingredient list, what can and cannot be used. In the US, not so much. So what we see, right, and has been emerging is, particularly in some of the younger generation, the Gen Z, they're demanding it. They're demanding that the formulations really be thoughtful and that you're conscious of what you're putting into a program, how you're packaging it.
Yeah.
So the two key themes, and there are plenty more, but I would say conscious beauty, health and beauty, what's good for you, conscious beauty, what's good for the planet. These are two key themes. And then last, I would just add is that in both, science, is certainly underneath them and kind of supercharging them because of some of the capabilities that we have today.
Yeah, we talked a lot about conscious beauty and whatnot, and I think that's super interesting about how technology, the wearables, how it's all coming together, and helping inform what you're going to use. We actually have a question from the audience here, and a little bit on the topic of wellness, and I'm not sure this one's going to be in your wheelhouse exactly, Michelle, but I'll ask. So Alex in the audience is just asking if Ulta Beauty is exploring products and seeing the adoption of CBD infused products.
Absolutely, right. And CBD, no doubt, that is a huge trend. We certainly, we've seen an emergence of it. Again, that particular, CBD is in a variety of different categories. But that is absolutely a trend. We, like in one of the ways that we think about it, right, when we go back to thinking about ingredients, right, is what people are looking for. Oftentimes they're looking for a particular ingredient. And so, previously people may have looked for a brand, they may have looked for a price point, right? No, now they're looking and they really want to understand the composition. They may want to do a search for CBD products, as an example. And so we need to get smarter and actually take some of the ingredients, something like CBD that's a part of a formulation, right? We need to be able to expose that, and we need to understand not just the scientific chart of elements, right? But what does it mean? What does it mean to the guest, and kind of turn those into, terminology that makes sense to our guests. So CBD for sure, huge trend. And it's definitely something that the beauty, like the beauty enthusiast, as we say, but people in the beauty space are looking for products that, have that as a part of their makeup.
Okay, and on that note, it sounds like you are embracing that trend. And so Julie in our audience actually asked another question, and it sounds like you're looking at some of that search data to inform those products and what's coming up. So she was just asking how your team uses that data to inform other trends Ulta is going to embrace. So what is your team looking at?
Well, for sure, probably not different than a lot of people. For sure, we're looking at when you said, Julie kind of mentioned, she said search. And so absolutely, right, and have been for years, right, what people search for, both online on the digital property, our own, as well as on the internet at large. We obviously look at that. We look at the keywords, we look at the terms. We hope that we're doing a good job from a digital marketing perspective, kind of buying terms that are important. Hyaluronic acid, if people are looking for that, things became right, mask knee, right, became a trend with the pandemic where because of the mask, people were experiencing breakouts. So did we see that potentially there was a trend that was driving a need for a different type of a skincare product? For sure. So we definitely, we monitor, we look at external kind of, like the trends that are on the internet at large. We look at the what people are searching for, browsing. May not just be a organic search, right? But it also may be how they are navigating, so we're going to evaluate that. We're going to see that maybe, in their navigation, maybe they're going stronger into a particular category. For sure, I think one of the things that we talked about, right, is as a result of the pandemic, one of the things that we found people searching more for was above the mask. It's like people were looking for, their eyes were still visible, lips were behind the mask, but for their eyes, suddenly we saw greater search around eyeshadow, lashes, mascara, right? And then, knowing that, or, we can pivot. And we think that we can, because of kind of our personalization capabilities and the data science that we have, that we can pivot pretty quickly by analyzing that, seeing an increase in engagement in a particular area. And then what we will do is we would then modify our digital marketing to meet those needs.
Yeah, that's great. I kicked my lip gloss habit during the
well,
pandemic.
Let's hope that, right, we're going to be, now here we all are on all these calls for hours that, we can have a nice lip color.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Actually, this just made me think of another question, not to put you on the spot here, but thinking about Julie's question around trends in Glam Lab, can you see, playing with it again myself, like there's a wide range of colors and all the different types of cosmetics. Can you see like what consumers are leaning toward to know, I don't know, we're going to go back to the 80s and have like bright blues and bright greens on our eyes and things, or people are tending to be more neutral? Like, is that the type of data and trends you're also able to ingest?
Well, again, if you think about virtual try-on, that's a great question, Mandy. When you think about virtual try-on, it's, we think it's just like, this gives us, like, this is uber personalization, because there can't be anything more personal, I think we mentioned it, than what you look like, right? So for sure, now what we're seeing, and when you think about that, think about the experience in the digital store, right? People may be shopping the store and they are looking for certain things, but you don't know what they're basically, what they're looking at, what they're experimenting with. Digitally, what we know is we may know that you're searching for a color, and so we can look at the colors that are associated with things. But even more important, now we can see that you're trying on lighter shades of red. And if you've done, if you've used Glam Lab and you've used Shade Finder, and you, of course, want us, you provide that information to us, that's obviously you opt in. If you do that, then we know your tone, undertone, so we know your skin tone, and then we know you're looking at light shades of red, and we know other people like you. Let's say there is a trend that everyone is looking at light shades of red, for example. So we think with Glam Lab, one of the things is that it brings color really to life, that it kind of explodes the topic of color. And, the rainbow of colors in the world, right? It's the rainbow of colors that comprise us, and then the products that basically are leveraged, because, a lot of people I might like to put on, we were talking about it, maybe I want to wear a black lipstick or a blue. Maybe it's not just about what's going to look good or what I think is going to look good on my skin tone, but something that just, I want to wear and that I think defines me. So something like Glam Lab really, really elevates some of the visual properties of the products, and brings them to life, in a different way, so that you can really get a little bit more granular, on trends from that perspective.
Absolutely. I think it definitely gives you an opportunity to have fun with some of the colors. And we even talked about how testers in the store, you're probably not going to test 12 different shades of something. You're going to select a few, but like in Glam Lab, you can kind of quickly go through the various ones.
You can, you can do it very efficiently, right? And again, it's that, for sure we can look at, and the other thing is it's kind of no different, right? That if we know, the more we know about, basically, the beauty enthusiast, the better we can get at ensuring that we really are meeting the needs of all of our guests, right? Which is important to us, right? Of course, our guests are, our guests are everything. So we really want to make sure that if in fact, we might see, maybe we do see, a set of our guests, and maybe they're trying things on and we don't really see them then evolving to, to the cart, to purchasing something. Maybe it's because we really don't have anything that meets their visual needs, whatever that might be. It could be maybe they're getting ready for Halloween, a holiday, who knows what, right? And maybe, depending, maybe there's something that we don't have and that we actually need to fill in our assortment with a particular, and it could be, again, think color, it could be an ingredient in a particular category. So, it absolutely is, again, it gives us a key tool that ultimately what we want to do is, it isn't just about, digital and everything kind of going virtual, but more it's bringing that experimentation to the forefront, allowing the guest, to have access to whatever they're interested in, and then making sure that the assortment, when, like basically whatever the assortment we have is and what our marketing strategy is, that we're really speaking to, the needs of the, of the beauty enthusiast, and when they walk in the store, if they need something immediately or they want to come in and really touch and feel it, right, that it's available in the store.
Yeah, that's a really great segue as well into my next question as we start to wind down here. So you talked about going in store. One of the things Yelp wanted to highlight toward the end of 2021 was the fact that we saw an 8% increase in new business openings. And I think, amongst COVID, which has been a roller coaster for everyone, we were really excited to see that. I know that new store openings are a priority for Ulta. Obviously, we saw your partnership with Target. I read that in 2021, 42 new stores opened for Ulta, showing that there definitely is demand for consumers wanting to go in store. I'm just wondering, as all businesses continue this road to economic recovery, what's a best practice you can share with everyone listening here from a marketing perspective and a digital innovation perspective?
Well, it was when I think about, really what we would say, I think what Ulta Beauty, I hope, Ulta would agree, and, anyone out there with Ulta kind of, this resonates with them, right, is that, I think how we really think about this, and I mentioned it before, but our marketing message, really the message, we've certainly been on a journey to evolve that. And we really think about it as all things beauty, all in their world. Not all in one place. We've really pivoted, and we think that's super important, and we've been on a journey, right? That's why digital is important, physical is important, because if you think about it from the guest and put the guest lens on, you meet them where they are, where they want to be, whether it's social, in a digital work, like digital property, in a physical store. So all things beauty, all in their world. It's the reason that we obviously, stores are critically important to us. Our beauty enthusiasts still want to come in the store. They want to experiment. We have services. It's still very hard. You might be able to dabble with hairstyles, but you still need someone. You could cut it yourself. You could. And some people may have learned to cut their own hair by now, right? But if you want a little help with that, someone's going to need to cut your hair. So, we think the physical stores are important. We think location, right? Obviously, Ulta, from the very beginning of time, we think we chose our locations. Very importantly, we're meeting the guest where they are, right? A lot of our locations are destinations. Omni-channel is huge to us. We recognize for sure, I think everyone out there does, that again, all things beauty, all in their world. If they want to experiment, look for something and have it shipped to their home, they can. If they want to look for something, go in store and pick it up, get it faster if they can. If they want it in a couple of hours, right, we're certainly playing around with some same day delivery. We also have the capability that if you want to come to the store and pick it up curbside, right, you don't want to come into the store. So all of these different formats, right, for sure, listen to the guest. We listen to our guests. We listen to them through search. We listen to them through the reviews, Q&A, in social communities and in physical stores. We watch the behavior. Where are they looking to get their product? Where are they looking to just engage and have fun with beauty? And we meet them, in every place that they're located.
Yeah, I think definitely having the guest at the center of everything is something that I see Ulta Beauty doing really, really well. And it sounds like you really are making a lot of strides to meet them where they are and with what they want. So just last question here. We have a couple minutes left. So last question about reviews. Obviously, in this new normal, consumer reviews are more important now than ever before. And I think everyone knows consumer reviews are part of Yelp's foundation, and we work really hard to feature content that reflects real experiences. So we don't allow businesses to solicit for consumer reviews. We have recommendation software that recommends the most reliable content, and we have teams and policies in place to protect both our consumers our consumers as well as businesses. And so I'm just curious, you mentioned a little bit earlier in our conversation looking at reviews, but how are you using consumer review content to help guide your innovation roadmap?
Well, there's a kindred spirit there, right? We are kindred spirits because reviews are super important. And for the beauty community, right, beauty enthusiasts are highly engaged. We have look at the explosion of interaction on, social platforms, Yelp certainly being one of them, and YouTube and Instagram, et cetera, right? It just says only that beauty enthusiasts are highly engaged. And people want to hear what other people are saying. So for sure, they want to listen to an expert, come in the store, talk to people, via video chats, things of that nature. But most importantly, they actually want to hear what everybody else is saying. So we see that reviews, whether they are written, whether they are, it's audio or they're video, it's a form of a review. We think they're super important. We know they're super important. And we listen to the guests because we share them, right? We share them with other guests, and we bring to life, the capability for you as a beauty enthusiast to look for something based upon what people are saying. Right. So we think it's incredibly important, and we recognize the fact that, we listen to our guests listen to other guests. Reviews are super critically important. I look at reviews all the time when I'm thinking about something or I'm kind of learning about something, because more and more we trust each other. We trust the opinion of someone that maybe is like us. Right. So the reviews are critically important. And we think that putting the lens of what other people are saying, kind of, for the most part, once again, it's a little bit of like an equal opportunity. Everyone can be an expert. So let's hear their voices.
I think great way to end today. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah, really happy to be here, you guys.
And Jamie, we'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and we hope to see you again soon. All right, next up we have Kristen Darcy, Chief Marketing Officer from Madison Reed, and moderating this session is Hamid KM, EVP Products and Marketing from Starista. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Looks very
Doing well.
tropical and sunny where you are.
It's a great screensaver, maybe.
Oh, oh, you fooled me. Hi, Hamid. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well, doing well.
Great.
As you can see, I'm the perfect host for fashion and beauty here, right? So it's
looking good over there, that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll let you guys
Likewise.
take it over.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jamie. Hi, Kristen. Looks like you are in the South here with me in Florida, right?
Yes, that is true.
Yes.
Hi, Hamid. Good to see you.
Hello. Likewise. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself to get started. I know you have a deep background with Madison Reed and other places. Be great to learn a little bit about your experience before we dive in.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in the marketing industry now, I suppose, just about 20 years, which I almost can't believe. And I started on the agency side, having the really good fortune to work with just amazing creatives, amazing technologists, and amazing analytics folks, which I think bodes well for this conversation today. And then moved into the brand world. And again, was fortunate there too to work with some just incredible brands, Ralph Lauren, who I'm actually wearing now, Ralph Lauren, Oscar de la Renta, the portfolio of Coty brands in beauty, and then American Eagle, Aerie, PacSun, and then most recently Madison Reed, where I just recently left. So just an incredible group of brands. And I think having started on the digital side, you know, my backbone has always been sort of performance digital marketing, but then to add the brand responsibility over the last couple of years has been incredibly eye-opening. And to see the balance between sort of the what being brand and the how being the rigor behind performance marketing, I now understand why those two worlds coming together in the most symbiotic of ways is critically important to success.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. So, you know, it kind of leads to like two areas, you know, of questioning, right? Number one is the brand that you mentioned. Some of them are entrenched, right, with brand loyalty, like Ralph Lauren and stuff. And then, you know, some of the others are kind of like startups and you know, fighting for that shelf space or that mind share. So how do you look at the brand versus performance based on, you know, a startup scrambling for shelf space versus an entrenched brand with a lot of loyalty?
I think, you know, a brand is a brand, right? So at the end of the day, you really want to think about how do I build a brand while enabling performance marketing to do their best work in a brand enhancing way. I think what's difficult is every company these days, whether larger or a startup, and they should focus on this, you know, the only metric that really matters is sales. But ultimately, what drives sales is a litany of these micro moments that just include, you know, brand campaign development, content, then placement of that content at the right time, at the right place, all powered by, I think, a supercharged performance engine. So I think any brand in the world right now, sort of in this modern marketplace where everybody is fighting for not only wallet share, but consumers' mind share, has to walk that line really carefully, and one definitely feeds the other. I also think, and I again say this coming from a place where I started sort of in performance marketing, but I think any brand out there can performance market itself to death. And I say that because there's only so many customers from a lower funnel perspective that you're able to go after before you just keep talking to the same ones. You're driving a tremendous amount of inefficiency. So really the opportunity is to figure out within your marketing spend, what are those upper funnel activities? What is the right place for you to be as a brand? And what are the different layers of storytelling? And by that, I mean, not just buy now, shop now, et cetera, but learn more about our collaboration, learn more about our influencer partners or our network of sales associates who are brand ambassadors. And then of course, there are even more upper funnel brand plays by way of partnerships and so forth. But you really need to be laser focused on both in order to make the entire machine work. And again, that's regardless of size of brand.
That's a great point. So I think the term you had used before was almost like back to the future, right? So we've become so focused on D2C, so focused on return on ad spend and all that. So how do you see the going back up the funnel, right? Going back to the future almost. So what are your thoughts on how brands can do that, especially in the fashion beauty marketing area?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I love the Back to the Future analogy because I think about sort of Marty McFly getting into the flying car with Doc. But I think what's happening is there's been a shift from sort of the height of COVID where customer acquisition costs were very low, spend had been pulled back depending on the industry and the brand. And so it was a bit of a free for all. You could pick up customers left and right. Now, whatever we're in, post or almost the end of COVID, brands are spending again. Competition is so tough. And then you have a couple of other technology factors happening. You had the iOS changes that happened last spring, which just makes your typical targeting less effective than it was before, driving up your acquisition costs. The second piece is everybody, of course, is talking about the cookieless world that is sort of impending, which is going to further, I think, swing the pendulum away towards just this day in, day out CAC focus. Let's place our bets in all the usual, sort of the usual places. And instead really think about two things. One, how do we drive brand love? And that includes not only awareness and consideration, but some of those softer metrics around how do you create communities of people that really, really love and talk about the brand on your behalf. The second, I think there's a huge opportunity in terms of loyalty. So again, customer acquisition costs going up. How do you turn, even if it's a small group of people, depending on the size of the brand, into real loyalists and brand ambassadors? And you see brands like Credo, for example, in beauty, who has an incredible loyalty program. And alongside of that, a lot of brand content. So if you go to their YouTube page, there are, interviews and makeup tutorials with all of their different beauty partner brands. They have celebrity makeup artists on there. And that's, I think, their way of focused on loyalty, focused on content, knowing that customer acquisition is just so tough right now. And by the way, they say that high tide raises all ships. So by focusing on all of that content development from a brand perspective, what they're actually going to see come back is probably increased SEO rankings, increased buzz about the brand, which ultimately translates to sales. And then the performance marketing doesn't have to quite work so hard.
Yeah, that's interesting. So from, I'm more on the performance marketing side from the activation side, but I think the area that a lot of marketers miss is exactly what you're talking about, the content and the interaction. So how have you seen that over your career? How influential is the content and that piece of it versus the nuts and bolts, which I deal with, which is finally left-handed trombone players that need hair dye, right? So how do you tie that together in that area, like the content and that piece?
I think the content is the what. And then whether it's performance marketing or media buys, whatever you want to call it, that's ultimately the how to reach the customer. But a couple different thoughts on content. One, it can't be one size fits all for every platform. So what you're looking for on Snapchat, which I saw Gucci Beauty, for example, just launched a Snapchat lens to try to go after that younger consumer because they know that all the eyeballs are there. And that's a great brand play. Is that going to result in an immediate sale of a Gucci lipstick? Who knows? Maybe Snap has some really good targeting capabilities, of course. But ultimately, that's an upper funnel brand play to insert Gucci Beauty in front of eyeballs on the platform in order to get that consumer to consider the brand. So that's what I mean about content cannot be one size fits all across the platform. Gucci's play there was a very specific lens in that example with Snapchat as a partner. I'm sure what they're doing on Instagram versus what they're doing on TikTok looks totally different. So you really need a multifaceted content strategy. And as we were talking about earlier, you need to make sure that there's layers to the brand storytelling, because let's say you're a brand that has low awareness. It's going to take the customer probably a couple times, a couple different touches before they understand what's the value proposition, why should I pay attention, why should I click, why should I be interested at all in you? And that happens all before you're ready to buy. So again, that message might be, and I saw this with Tiffany, for example, today, the jewelry company. They had an ad. It was absolutely beautiful. I think they bought out at least a part of the masthead of the New York Times. Beautiful ad, celebrity starring in the ad, walking in Paris. It romances you, it brings you in. You click, you go to tiffany.com, but it's a page where you can learn more about the campaign. So again, they're still pulling you in. Now, I'm sure they'll do this, but what I hope to see later today or tomorrow is a retargeting ad from Tiffany, right? And that retargeting ad might say, maybe it's a shop now, maybe it's a learn more about our jewelry collection that's associated with that particular campaign. But again, that's an example of how do you create these sort of bite-sized moments that are further leading people down the funnel rather than just coming out of the gate and telling them to shop now, particularly if it's a lesser known brand.
So that gets into, where and how would this pull, right? So, you talked a little bit about TikTok and some of the social media, and there have been a lot of changes with some of the privacy stuff. And the Facebook announcement yesterday, they've lost like $10 billion or something. So, it's starting to impact how you market it, right? So there are a lot of the influencers and those kind of things that you used before. So you're not getting that attribution right there, right? That you used to be able to do before to say, hey, this influencer, I saw this, and now I can measure that somebody actually bought this. So how do you see that changing in this? Do you still see the influencer type of marketing with the fashion beauty products, or are you thinking there's a shift back toward the way it used to be before with a lot more TV and that kind of stuff?
I think it's both. And the interesting thing about this marketplace right now, and you mentioned TV. So think about streaming TV. You're able to shift your budgets around pretty quickly and nimbly, depending on what you're seeing. I think there will still be a role for the influencer for sure, because they have scale, reach. They also have, and this is why they're called influencers. They have influence, particularly in different markets. So in my experience, as of late, we've seen, much more sales sort of coming in from that influencer population at a much more affordable rate versus where bets would have been placed in the past in terms of more traditional digital routes, if that makes sense. So I think influencers are still around in fashion and beauty. But then I think brands need to experiment with, if we swing back to this back to the future notion where there's TV testing happening on streaming, there's out of home and digital out of home, then how does that whole mix sort of look to contribute to the whole?
Right. So I totally understand that part. The thing that that we deal with from the Statista side, where we're talking to a lot of customers where they want to know, what is the return on my ad spend, right? So I'm spending $100. How much am I, getting out of it from a sale perspective? So as these things change, does that model change? Or do you look at it more holistically across all channels and say, hey, I gotta kind of change my, ad spend attribution, or try to figure out what you were trying to do because the markets have changed, because things have changed with regulations and things like that?
It's a great question. And I don't think you can value every media type the same in terms of what's the immediate ROI. And I say that sort of actually relevant to this conversation, which is the brand investment, right? So the two ways that I think about it is you take your total marketing budget and you figure out based on the size of the brand, what the sales growth objectives are, et cetera. How much can you siphon away? Is it 10%, 20% in terms of upper funnel brand plays? And then the metrics around those things are very different. So, brands in the past, like American Eagle, for example, we actually had a brand love metric, and that included awareness, consideration, YouGov ranking, et cetera. And ultimately, brands know that the greater the sort of love quotient, if you will, ultimately the greater the shareholder value. So you could attribute those upper funnel initiatives to things like impressions in market. Are you driving bookings or sales in a particular region if you heavy up, let's say, out of home and isolate the other regions from an A/B test perspective? So it's correlative. I think then on the other hand, you have the hard-hitting kind of CAC-focused media channels. And that all day long is going to be what's the CAC to LTV and how quickly are you going to get paid back? That's where I think different businesses are interesting and loyalty comes in, because if you can get somebody to buy the brand once or twice, then get them to sign up for a loyalty program and really extend that LTV, then you might be able to afford, the cost of customer acquisition to be a little bit higher, right? But it's just a different. The way I look at it is there are two different metrics between how you're valuing the ROI on the brand side versus the performance marketing buy now side.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting metric, shareholder value, right? So most of us look at shareholder value as, hey, my stock price went up, right? So I've got more value from the stock. How do you attribute, or how do you tie marketing into that, right? What's the measurable, like in some of the places you've been, like a Ralph Lauren or something like that, where there is built-in intrinsic shareholder value because everybody knows Ralph Lauren. So how do you, as a beauty brand or the fashion brand, how do you even say, hey, we've driven shareholder value?
I mean, I think it's in a couple of ways, right? One is just pure sales. The second is what we were just discussing, which is how do you value the upper funnel brand initiatives and create the correlation where you have X amount more, hundreds of millions impressions in market. How long does that take then in terms of driving the sale? And I think all brands are trying to figure that out right now. At some of these brands over the years, the groups had been separate between brand would be over here doing all the really incredible kind of wow things, from advertising campaigns to big sort of store technology takeovers to big partnerships. And then again, you'd kind of have often a silo, and now I'm talking, 5 to 10 years ago, you'd have sort of often a silo, the performance marketing team. And I think what we've seen over the past couple of years is a shift where those two come together, because you can't be planning sort of brand in isolation of what your media campaign is ultimately at the end of the day. So I think that shift helps make the connection for shareholder value between all these activities even clearer than it's been in the past.
So this question was actually on the previous panel, and I thought it was actually great question, was how does something like reviews and those kind of things tie into this, right? So do you look at reviews as a performance or as a brand, or a combination of both?
It's a great question. And I think it's a combination of both, because brand includes reputation, right? Mm-hmm. Brand reviews, also includes if I see something I love, or as the woman from Ulta was just talking about, the power behind kind of the peer review. Also in beauty, the Ulta beauty or the Allure beauty seal, I think is one example of a review at the most heightened level. I mean, I buy a lot of products that have the award seal on it. So I see it being in both ways. The other reason I think it helps from a performance perspective is also the more ratings and reviews that you can accumulate, it helps in two ways. One, your SEO rankings for sure, so that you're covering a wide range of topics, different products, et cetera. But then the other is really the ability to use ratings and reviews in your marketing materials. And that's where maybe it's a lower funnel play that comes in. So I've heard about this brand. I might have seen the Tiffany ad, for example, that we talked about earlier, but then to have somebody say the not jewelry, making it up, this is what I saw earlier today, the not jewelry is so incredible. It never tarnishes. It feels special. It's lightweight when I put my earrings in, et cetera. And that's a rating and review. You can actually use that content as a direct marketing vehicle in order to get the consumer over that purchase hump. So I see it as both brand reputation and hugely beneficial from a performance marketing perspective.
Great. Now shifting gears a little bit. So we've got this pandemic. We're in Florida, so nobody here thinks there's a pandemic. But with the stuff that's going on, there's been a lot more shift to like a D2C, buy stuff on the web, get it shipped versus going to a store or something like that. How does that drive marketing, right? So how does that change that whole brand to performance type of thing, right? So different measurables, foot traffic versus site visits. How does that affect things, or how did it affect your thinking in the past?
I think on the one hand, brands that have physical locations are at an advantage even during this very strange time. And I say that because for some brands, it is the best representation of the brand essence to be able to walk into a physical store, experience the interaction with the customer service representatives, and really understand what this brand kind of lives and breathes every day. And actually, Ralph Lauren is an incredible example of that. You walk into any one of those stores, and the website is beautiful, by the way, but you walk into any one of those stores, and I don't know about you, but my breath is always taken away. There's a certain smell. There's always certain very consistent visual cues, and it's an incredible experience. So I think having those outposts help with regard to new customer acquisition as well as loyalty for that matter. And what you've seen brands like that do in the past is reward, from a loyalty perspective, their very best customers with exclusive access to events and experiences, whether they be in the store or otherwise, as a result of being a great customer. So I think that physicality, while dialed back right now for obvious reasons, minus in Florida, to your point, but dialed back makes sense. But I think regardless of, obviously the metaverse being such a hot kind of topic right now, I still think people are yearning for getting back to experiences and live events and so forth. And brands that can tap into that when appropriate and safe at the right time, I think are the ones that are going to win.
Okay, so from a beauty versus fashion, let's split out the two. Going back to the previous question, is there a difference between the fashion industry versus the beauty industry with that? Is it a different dynamic, or can it be all lumped together?
I mean, I think what's interesting is that it depends on the brand. There are a lot of beauty brands. If you think about, Coty's portfolio, for example, I think there was only one or two of the 76 at the time that I was there that actually had a physical freestanding presence. So there was a pop-up, if I'm remembering correctly, in Times Square with one of the brands. And then I think Philosophy, who had their own website, might have also had their own retail store. And I bring that up because when I talked about sort of potentially, if done well, a physical location being the best example of a brand's essence, a lot of beauty brands don't have their own stores. Some do. Fresh is an example of one, and I think their stores are incredibly well done, but a lot are distributed through third parties. So it just makes the dynamic different versus a lot of the retail brands that I've been with on the fashion side that do have their owned stores.
And then that brings in, sites like Amazon, right? Where the brand is Amazon and you're fighting against, all the other folks out there and things like that. So how does Amazon affect this, or how did it affect your marketing, right? So how did you handle something like that?
It's a great question. And I think a lot of brands in both fashion and beauty are trying to work their way through Amazon. On the one hand, friend, because to carry your products on Amazon helps, particularly smaller brands that are less well known, helps from a brand awareness perspective. So friend for sure. The faux part is because if you're a Prime member, it is so easy to just click and buy on that website versus, let's say, your owned brands. I think everybody over the last couple of years has been struggling with what role does Amazon play in our marketing mix? Do we want to partner with them in a limited capacity, meaning perhaps there are certain SKUs that are exclusive to the broader us as a brand, and then there's some offshoot that's on Amazon, again, just for the brand awareness piece. So I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer other than to say Amazon has to be a part of your strategy.
Okay, that leads to another question, which I get a lot because a lot of our clients that are on Amazon only put portion of their SKUs, as you mentioned, and then they try to figure out how Amazon's doing versus everything else, right? So they'll run campaigns with us, they'll put stuff on Amazon, they'll try to patch things up in the back and try to figure out what's working. Unless you're the only way they really can figure things out is if they're shipping it themselves, right? If they're getting an order through Amazon and shipping versus storing at Amazon, have Amazon, sell it, they really don't know the demographic details, right? So when you're putting something on Amazon, do you consider that, or do you just say, hey, whatever I can sell, or does it go into like what products go on Amazon versus staying off of Amazon?
I think as we were saying, it ties back to what products can go on Amazon that I don't feel would be detrimental to the brand, right? Because of the awareness play. Now, what I have heard recently about Amazon is that you can put your own sort of piece of collateral in the package with an outbound Amazon shipment, I believe, provided it is to promote your loyalty program. So that is one way to try to attribute the sale. And then the picking up of a new customer for your brand with a code, let's say, on that piece of collateral. So that's one way to get around it. But I think, as we said, I think a lot of brands are struggling with what does a limited assortment look like there? And then what's the return? And then, as you mentioned, the other factor to consider, of course, is that you need performance marketing dollars to make sure that your brand and products are seen on Amazon. So, I think what'll be interesting to see is how people handle that. Is that sort of in a separate group that's focused on wholesale? Is that brought into the broader marketing organization? Because maybe that's where the performance marketing experts sit. And then how are you constantly looking at budgets across the board, Amazon versus your own channels based on the return that you're seeing?
Yeah, no, that's great. This brings me back to something I had, asked you a while back. How does the whole brand versus awareness with all these different channels, how does it change when you're a startup and you're just trying to get going versus an established brand, right? So in the perception of, hey, I'm just scrambling to get my name out, right? That's one side. And the other side is I've been a brand for 100 years and everybody knows me. So, and you've been at both. So how does that mix happen, right? Where do you think that you go from more of a performance to more of a, hey, I'm a brand now and I need less of this and more of this, right? So where do you see that happening?
It's such a great question. And I think it depends on the performance metrics of your hard-hitting lower funnel marketing dollars. And I say that because if you start to see the cost of new customer acquisition rise and rise and rise, and you realize that perhaps you are talking to the same people because maybe you are in the same channels, then I think startups have to grow, right? So that's where you say, how do we introduce some and slowly upper funnel metrics and campaigns into the mix? And then what does ROI look like? How do you make sure that everybody holds hands? And then also, how do you try, working either with your internal team or your agency, your performance agency, how do you try to figure out when you're going to get that payback to know if you should pull back on those brand activities and continue to fuel only performance marketing, or keep trying to give it a go? I think on the bigger brand side, you just have the luxury of time in a different way, where you have a brand partnership. It was interesting. We did one at American Eagle where we partnered with Universal Music Group and put up and coming artists, 5 of them, on tour. We drove them around in a branded bus and then had them perform in our stores and malls. And so, yes, that's a brand play, but at the same time, what we wanted to look at was there an increase in foot traffic into those stores either before and or after that particular event, given the buzz in that market, right? And then same thing was true with sales. And then same thing was true with, obviously American Eagle has tremendous brand awareness, but was there better, let's say, brand consideration in those markets? So that's an example of, I think that tour, if I'm remembering correctly, was about 6 months in total. And you have the luxury of time with those bigger brands for those brand activities to set in.
So from a brand activity, did you, in your career, find that they work better with other partners? Like, having, like, what I mean by that is, you as you tie in other brands, did you find that helped you, or it was more of just trying to have a different way of driving people to your store or something like that?
It's a good question. I think the right brand partners can be accretive to the business for a couple different reasons. Depending on the size of the brand, they can help smaller brands drive their own awareness and scale. I think, again, with the right partner, it can give brands credibility to play in new spaces. So let's say retail goes into gaming or retail goes into sports. Again, the right partner can help you establish credibility in those adjacent categories and bring new customers in as a result of being in front of a different set of eyeballs at the right time with a unique brand message. So in my experience, again, the right partners can help make a good difference.
So that leads to a different of a tactical question. So something like a sponsorship, right? Would you consider that a brand activity or a performance activity? How do you look at those kind of things? And I know that it's huge in the fashion and beauty world to sponsor different things. So where do you see that fitting in?
I see it sitting in brand, but being sort of a performance marketer, sort of way back when, I always look for those partnerships to figure out where are the performance hooks. So how do we, I was with a brand that did a partnership with the LA Rams, for example, and we were constantly working with them to try to figure out, could we get access to your email list and turn it into a performance play, right? Or could we be embedded on your social media channels, for example? How do we try to get people who come through this partnership? How do we try to make sure that we're getting their contact info to go back to them and sell the products at a later date? And then frankly, how do we make sure that we're packaging up all of this content that's occurring at games and using it to build the brand and our SEO rankings and our influence, frankly? So I see it as a brand play, but there are definite opportunities for performance hooks.
That's great. LA Rams would be great this year, right? So
that's right.
Yeah, that would
Go
be
Rams.
big. There you go. So yeah, I used to sell sponsorships in the past, and it was very data driven. It was tied into TV, so tied into who's watching what show and tie that stuff together. So how much research? I know you mentioned the hooks and stuff to try to get that, but how much research goes into like who's an influencer or what program you might sponsor or what team you might sponsor? Is it geo-based, or does it change in different areas and different products, or is it generally a top-down approach? How does a brand look at that?
I think it depends on the brand. Some brands are really excited to just be part of the local community, right? And so it's how can we partner in the right way? And perhaps it's less scientific on the influencer front, because you brought that up as well. You can be very scientific nowadays. You can look at sort of their reputation score, their reach, the engagement that they're getting with their followers, et cetera. And make sure that you're picking the right partner for you. So that would be the data side of things. And then obviously you can look at their aesthetic and make sure that it feels sort of solid from a brand perspective. You also mentioned TV shows, and all of these things sort of run the gamut, but have a similar flavor in that I think what you want to go after is you want to buy audiences, and then you look at, okay, where are they spending their time, whether it's TV or programmatic audio, whatever it might be. So starting with the customer first and making sure that you're going to them on the right platforms with the right differentiated content, whatever that looks like, partnerships, program buys from a TV perspective, or influencers is how I would look at all of that.
Great. I think our time has come to an end. Am I right, Jamie, or do we have time for one more question?
You have one more time. You have time for one more question if you'd like.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the next question gets into the whole thing of now you've set all this up, right? So you've got a great sponsorship program. You've got great influencers. You've got your data, and you're marketing it. How do you pick your tactics? Like, where do you go, right? So even though you have your audiences all set, how do you look at where am I going to put how much money, right? What's a determining factor that you've seen in your career with that?
I go back to audiences. I mean, there was a brand that I was working with over the course of my career, and the media plan that sort of what had been done in the past was probably 70% traditional. And given the age, the demographics of the audience, we shifted it pretty quickly to be almost 75% digital. And the reason being is through all of the research, and again, looking at media consumption habits and figuring out by platform where people were spending their time, it made sense for that brand to kind of turn the plan on its head and go after a much, much more aggressive digital footprint. Then the rest of the kind of the allocation of budget was, okay, how do we look at the upper funnel brand building activities? Is there some degree of traditional that's included in there? Or is it partnerships, some balance of both? But it's really starting with the customer and then creating your media allocation accordingly. And like we said earlier, making sure that you're very clear with your team and leadership at whatever the brand is. This is the portion of the budget that is going to return a fairly immediate sale. This is what that looks like from a CAC to LTV perspective. And then this might be the more upper funnel play. Here are the metrics associated with that, but we're going to be fluid to be able to move the budgets accordingly.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I don't know if there's any questions from anybody else within the chat. I don't see any raised hands or anything. Let me see. Nope, so I think we are good. So I appreciate your time, Kristen. Thank you very, very much. And Ariel, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're on mute, Ariel.
You know what? I mean, we're a year and a half into this, or, you know, over a year and a half, and I still can't figure out how to turn off mute. I feel I'm not the only one though. So thank you so much for joining us. That was such an amazing conversation, and we can't wait to have you both back soon. So with that, I will introduce myself. I'm Ariel Russo, Director of Content and Community here at Brand Innovators. And once again, super excited for the next panel of speakers because we have two of our favorites. First, Melinda Johnson, the Director of Marketing for Hair at Henkel. And then we have Stacy Bohr, the SVP of Sales at Crisp. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Melinda. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Melinda.
Took a second to connect it all.
You're good. I'm so happy to see you again.
I know. It's great to see you too. Hi, Ariel.
Hi. Have fun, you two.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stacy.
I know. So I just want to start by saying I loved talking to you the other day. I immediately was excited for this panel. You are fierce. You have a lot to say in terms of marketing, but also leadership. So thank you for the privilege of joining the stage with you.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this conversation. It's a good break from the typical stressful day that we all go through. So
yeah, stress at work. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so why don't you tell us what your current role is and what it entails?
Absolutely. So I am currently a marketing director at Henkel, managing the hair portfolio, which is inclusive of hair color and styling. And the two brands that I work on, the first one is called Schwarzkopf Color. And there's a few sub-brands under that, but it's consumer retail hair color that spans the gamut of benefits, but most women use color to cover their gray hair. And then the other brand I lead is called, yes, it's Look Man too. Embracing. The other brand I lead is called Got to Be, and it's a styling and color brand. So it has a variety of stylers that are known for really strong hold. And then on the color side, it's known for more bolder hair colors, fashionable, bolder colors.
Nice.
Beautify you up. So yeah, so those are the businesses I lead. I've been in Henkel about a year. And it's been an exciting ride so far, especially coming in to a new job like during the pandemic and during so much change in our world right now. So it's I feel like it's a new world and paradigm for everybody across all industries.
The new normal, perhaps.
Yeah.
You've been in the beauty industry for a long time. What has your career progression looked like, and why do you stay in beauty?
Absolutely. So it's interesting because it certainly hasn't been linear. I start like when I graduated from college and everything, I actually started as a chemical engineer. Like,
really?
Like the furthest thing from beauty. Yeah, actually. Chemical engineer, I was selling technical cells until I was in technical cells selling chemicals into like asphalt and cement and wow. Agricultural industry, all sorts of things. You know, this young Black 21-year-old girl selling chemicals in a very predominantly male industry. But I always had like this creative side of me. I grew up really influenced by the performing arts. I used to competitively dance and I'm into music and artwork and culture. So I always had this creative side. And I think with that, because I was competing and representing myself, beauty products and how you look and how you feel was always a part of that. So it's interesting as I worked a little bit and then I went back to get my MBA, that is when I transitioned into brand management and into the beauty industry. And it was a great meld of things for me, because being in sales, it's almost like owning your own business. So I like this idea of being able to like have a product and figure out how to win and how to grow it, almost like a little baby. And then I just, the beauty industry is just, it's fun, but it's also, for me, like what really drew me to it is the impact that it has on you as a person and your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself, as well as the way it can transform you and just kind of change I can go through some major transformations from like no makeup to like full on glam, but then it also makes you, just beauty products in general, that transformation can really turn how you feel about yourself completely around. So that's, for me, like the start. And then I would say over my career, I started my beauty career at Procter & Gamble, and I was there for 9 years across a variety of businesses in hair care and color and cosmetics, in a variety of different roles. I moved on to Johnson & Johnson for a year in therapeutic hair care, globally managing the Rogaine business, which was exciting and a different aspect because I hadn't really worked on men's products before. And then I was at L'Oreal for 5 years as well. And with that, I worked more specifically on multicultural hair brands. And now I've been at Hinkle for a year. So I've had a diverse amount of experiences, which has been great in terms of like my career trajectory. But like I said, it hasn't been linear. It hasn't. Some of the roles I took them a little begrudgingly. Like I didn't necessarily want to do them. The one I can think of in particular was a shopper marketing role that had me moving to Arkansas to be on the Walmart team, to support the Walmart team for P&G. And I didn't necessarily want to take it, but it ended up being like one of the best things that I ever did in terms of like career development and growth and really pushing myself. So it's been varied, but fun. But I would tell people, yeah, it's beauty is a great industry, and we're at a place now where it's evolving, it's becoming more inclusive, which is super exciting for me.
Yeah, and there's so many things I could say. Do you think you're still competitive when you bring yourself to work? Because you work on some challenger brands, right?
Yes, I am. Well, so it's funny you say that. What is? Gosh, I'm losing what I'm thinking of. It's like one of those personality type tests, strength finders.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of those. But no, absolutely. It's part of my DNA. I'm like competitive by nature, but it's not, it's almost like a self competition. It's like, I'm trying to like outdo myself. And I hate to say perfectionism because I feel like that's a bad word. Like, I don't think anyone can really be perfect, but it's always that striving to like do better and to like, and sometimes it's funny, I'll be in my mind competing on the smallest of things and people don't even know they're in competition, which is fine. It's all about it. It's thing. It's like, you don't know you're competing.
You're like, I just won. Sit down.
Right, I won. Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
On the most trivial of things, but it'll make you feel good.
You mentioned the pandemic. How, I mean, it's the new normal. How has it changed your strategy or your consumer base? My beauty regimen has completely changed since the pandemic. And it's like, sometimes I'm hoping and crossing my fingers no one comes to the door because I haven't put on my face for the day. Have you seen that? Like, what have you seen the pandemic to help shift strategy or give you more insight into your consumers?
Absolutely. Like I would say, Stacey, you're not alone. I think everybody's beauty and grooming habits changed, whether that's, your business on the top and loungewear on the bottom, or like you haven't done anything with your hair for forever. I went through a phase of a lot of scarves and hats and whatever, anything I could do to like camouflage the fact that I hadn't done my hair. So you're right on trend. I think everybody adjusted their ways. And I think what the pandemic brought is really, in my opinion, a need for us as brand owners and marketers out there to really make sure we truly understand where our consumer is at and what their needs are. And I feel like if you weren't a brand who was about truly serving your consumers, the pandemic forced you to be. Because their habits changed, their attitudes changed, our practices changed. And those who were able to adjust, understand that, but then adjust like their messaging, their, even adjust what kind of products you delivered or services you delivered in the pandemic. Like those who were already set up to be touchless and not in person and digital, they were already ahead of the curve. And if you weren't there, you had to kind of quickly move there. And then from a communication standpoint, you really needed to make sure, like, is my message relevant during this time? So I might have been talking about my products, so I work on hair products. I might have been talking about, great coverage and beautiful, like shiny, bouncy hair, but people weren't going to the stores to buy the products. So I need to shift my message more to how can I get something that maybe I might have been going to a salon and used to do that, hey, you can get this product and use it at home and it's really easy and here's how you do it. And it's okay if you're not an expert at it, like no one is, try it out. So you have to, change your messaging quite a bit. So I think that, that was another thing that really kind of upped the game from a consumer lens. And then I would say, Stacey, from like a leadership perspective, I think the other thing, at least for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think because the pandemic was like, got intertwined with all of the kind of social justice initiatives, Black Lives Matter, this big push on diversity and inclusivity, which, wasn't there like it is now. Like they kind of all got wrapped together. I feel like it's forced a lot of brands and businesses to really look at, were they truly meeting the needs of all their consumers? Are they reaching out to the masses in a real way? Are they being inclusive, not only to consumers, but even internally in your own businesses? Like, do you have a diverse workforce? Are you thinking about how to talk to all consumer segments, when you're developing your plans and your strategies? So that was, and that was a push. Not every organization was there, and it's okay. But what's great is where it's kind of pushed the landscape. And there's more to do, but I think, business and leadership wise, that was, another piece. And then the last thing I'll say on this point is, I feel like the pandemic, at least for me, it really upped my level of like empathy and compassion and flexibility as it relates to work. Because I do think the past couple of years have brought a lot of change, a lot of loss, dealing with a lot of like mental stress and mental health. Yeah, I mean, there's been so much we've had to deal with, and I think it forces you as an individual, but also like within your work practices, to be flexible, to be compassionate, and to really prioritize. Like, you can't get everything done. You can't do everything perfect. If you got up and you made it through the day and you're alive and you have a little bit of joy at the end, you won. You're winning. And a lot of people didn't get that opportunity. So
I'm listening to you and I'm like, right, you're so right. And then I'm like, oh, I have to ask more questions because I'm just so engaged with what you're saying. So, all right, there's so many directions I want to take this right now. Let's move into technology. Okay. We're in the rise, or we are in the middle of every organization transforming themselves digitally. How has that played a role in the things you're talking about, the changes that have to take place, understanding your consumer better? How are you using those tools to better understand and create empathy as a brand?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting that a lot of things were set up. So when we moved into this kind of pandemic world where a lot of things had to be done virtually, that some of the technology was there. I would say as a person who's working on a smaller brand and what I call a challenger brand in kind of a bigger beauty market, you don't have a lot of funds. So every dollar you spend has to be really intentional. And I think the way, at least on the business I run right now and in the past, have leveraged data has really been to truly leverage the insights we're getting from our first party data, from purchase data that we can get from second and third party, and really be able to tailor our communications, making sure we're meeting the right consumers that we are trying to talk to. The way data has evolved over the past several years, it really enables us to optimize our spend in a way that we know we can send the right message at the right time to the right consumer follow it up with another message to kind of really lead them through the consumer journey and through the funnel, from them first becoming aware of like what our products stand for and what we as a brand are about, educating them and moving them down the funnel to conversion. So I think it's been incredibly helpful. Like in the brands I'm on, one of my brands is solely focused on Gen Z. So we're hitting like a much younger demographic. Our media plan is probably like 100% digital at this point in social.
Wow.
So everything is, leveraging data to truly target our consumer and really go after them. And like I said, when you're a smaller brand, you don't have a lot of money. So you have to make every cent count. And it's critical.
A perfect use case for data, because you're able to find that needle in the haystack, but there's such little first party data within CPG that it is a real challenge. You mentioned this is maybe, I don't know, I hope this is not crossing the line, but here's the question for you. You mentioned Gen Z.
Yeah.
Those are some of the most transformative years that they're living through right now. And you're in beauty. How big of a responsibility do you feel to make sure that you're empowering that generation rather than giving them messages that decrease their self-esteem in the media and advertising? Because to me, it's a huge responsibility with huge outcomes based on what someone like you devises as their plan.
Yeah, you're so right, Stacey. It's significantly important. And, I look at it, well, there's a business lens, of course, but even from a personal lens, one of the things we know is that the Gen Z kind of cohort is the most diverse cohort that's out there. And, they think and operate differently. And when we think about, I think about me growing up and the messages I got, and, it was very one way. Like you looked at something on TV, or you went to a movie and saw something, and it was very one way. The way brands or services talk to you is like, here's our communication. We're now in a place where it's a two-way street, and with the proliferation of social, you can put a message out, but your consumer is going to have a message back for you, depending on what that is. So it's extremely important that you truly try to understand who you're talking to and look at it from a perspective of, I want to serve your needs. And it's hard because we're all in for-profit businesses where we're trying to, grow profit, grow top line dollars. But we have to remember that we're serving consumers. And I think when you start with that and truly understand the insights and what you're trying to do, then you can approach it from a very authentic way. The other thing I think from a beauty perspective is that it's very important that when you're talking to, this younger cohort, that we have to realize the imagery that we put out there, the messages that we put out there, they are impactful on people. And you don't think about it until you get older and you think back and you're talking to someone and you're like, this thing impacted me from when I was a young person. But I mean, everything, goes back to your formative years. And it's important that, us as brand leaders, that we have a responsibility and onus to make sure that everything we put out is authentic and caring, and again, meeting the needs and sensitive to the audiences we're trying to talk to. So, but even on that point, here's the thing, and this is what I do love about the younger generation, and I'm trying to adopt more of this myself, is that it's okay if you don't get it right. People recognize now we're all human beings. Even brands are run by people. No one's perfect. There's some messages or things that may not land right. And a lot of the time it's not because it was bad intent. It's because of a lack of knowledge or representation to have a lens to say, maybe this wasn't the right way or approach or communication, but it happens. The thing is, when it happens, you just have to address it. I mean, apologize, admit, hey, this wasn't right. Let's go back again. And that's what's, I think, so exciting about communicating to Gen Z in this whole digital world we're in, is it enables you to kind of try new things out, see if they'll work. If they don't, come back again, try it again, get it right.
I feel like Gen Z has a sense of resilience that other generations don't. Is that what you're implying? Because that's cool, if that's true.
It is. It is cool. I mean, there is a sense of resilience. I also think they're coming up in a time where there's so many messages, there's so much access to data. And it's good and bad too, because right, I feel like, and maybe it's more things are just more broadly knowledgeable and you know about more things, but I feel like today's issues and stresses and anxieties and, from a mental health perspective, it's much more talked about, like, people are open and they're talking about like the things that impacted you. And I feel like when I was coming up, I'm sure there was just as much stress and mental issues, but like, you didn't talk about it. You just kind of
swept it under the rug.
Exactly. You were like, you know what, push through, good luck. And then, of course it manifests years later probably, but that's a whole nother topic. But yeah.
That's what therapy is for.
Exactly. Which is a wonderful thing. We all, and therapy comes in many forms, but yes, there is a bit of resiliency, but I also think they're very demanding on the information they want to take in, how they want to hear it, and demanding authenticity.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you mentioned when we spoke this week that, you mentioned today that your product serves a unique market, which brings vibrant colors to people's heads, right? And I think that's perfect. That is very empowering as a message to be able to say, like, be whoever you want, own it, pick a color that's unique. I just had to say I love that.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't even cue that for you, Stacey. So that's like one of our brand taglines, for whoever you want to be.
Really?
Yes, maybe it is. You literally just.
Maybe I'm actually your target. It's not
Gen Z. You could be. I mean, I'm certainly not a Gen Z, but I try to keep up. But no, it's true, and it's empowering, actually. I mean, we're not there yet, obviously, like in this world, but I would love to get, I'm hopeful that we will get to a place where you can be whoever you want to be and bringing your full self to school, to work, to play. I live in the New York City metro area, so it's a very diverse melting pot, and you see all types of people from different walks of life and cultures. And, looking at someone on the outside is dangerous because you can't tell who or what that person is, what they do, what they have, what they think about. But I love it because everybody looks unique and different, and there's so much diversity. And I'm hopeful that we'll get to a place where, if you express yourself, so for example, if you wear like bright color in your hair, that's like the norm, from a student to a CEO. Yep. Like, why not? I think, that's the strive, is like external factors, start to fall away, and we become more accepting as we see more, as we become a more diverse and inclusive society.
There's like two directions I want to go, and I can't decide right now. One is around how you measure success, and the other is around empathy. So I'm going to take a short stop on the first, and then hopefully spend a lot of time on the second. You're using data, you're using technology, your audience is changing. How do you measure success in all that you do? It's a big question.
That is a big question, because I work on a brand, so of course we measure success by our sales and our profit, at a very high level. And again, we're here to grow and to continue to drive our business. But I think, there's other measures that you want to measure success around too. And because I'm a brand owner, and, my first passion is for the consumer, I always want to be driving consumer engagement, and, overall brand love, for any product that I work on, like, because while it's a long-term build to kind of build your equity and build, that true love and sentiment for your brand. And there's brands that have been out here that do it very well. It's a long game. It's not a short game, and it's not a quick buck, like day trading or something. Like, you have to invest the time and effort in it. But it's one of those things. It's like it pays off for you in the long run if you can kind of stay the course, which is hard to do for every business I've been on. Everybody wants to stay the course and do the right thing, but you always have those pressures of, how am I going to make my number? Whether it's a sales number, whether it's a profit number, whether it's a market share number, like that's always there. But as brand owners, that's our challenge, is like you have to drive the short-term growth, but you have to be thinking about your long-term gain, and you have to be thinking everything I do it's almost like a personal brand. Everything you do is a reflection of who you are. So you have to be intentional with that. But yeah, there's the monetary value, but then there's the kind of more other softer metrics that you want to look at to understand the true health of your brand.
Of course. So to pivot a little, you are so real. I like you so much.
You're definitely on my fan club.
I'm just saying, you bring authenticity to every conversation that you're having. And I'm wondering if that has always been true as it pertains to the workplace, or over time, have you become more courageous to be authentic?
So that's a great question. It has certainly been over time. And like, I think about my career, and I think, as I think about some of the moves I've made or the attitudes I've had, like, I think when I first started my career, and again, I think a lot of this is from upbringing, when you're first an underrepresented minority, and to be honest, being African-American came before being a woman growing up. Like, I grew up in a family where both parents were co-heads of households. There was no distinction between me and my brother and my sister. We all kind of were the same. It wasn't until I got into the working world that I realized, oh, people think think of me differently because I'm a woman. There's actual perception out there. But being Black, I definitely knew that, okay, you're in a society that already has certain perceptions about you and may think less of you because of the color of your skin. So because of that, you grow up being taught lessons. And I think they're really to kind of self-preserve, as well as how do you make your way in this world of, you've got to work twice as hard. You need to be, you really need to be together. You really shouldn't like show any weakness or vulnerability. That's bad. Like, people will judge you. And you grow up like that. And then you get into the workplace and you get into work and you're just like, I need to be perfect. I need to be buttoned up. I need to like not say anything, or like, mind my place.
But don't you think that's such garbage? Like, I feel as a woman, when I am in those situations, as a Caucasian woman, I'm thinking to myself, it shouldn't be this way. And sometimes I get resentful rather than channeling that energy to put my best foot forward. How do you thread that needle?
Yeah, I think you hit a pivotal point at some point in your career, and I can't, it's different for everybody, but what I'll say is, for me, I think I just decided I'm going to have to, like, in order to really build true relationships, you have to show more than surface level. You have to go deep. And that's in personal relationships and business relationships and in your work life. So I just made that decision, like, I'm gonna be more vulnerable. I'm going to be me. I'm going to, if something doesn't feel right, I'm going to speak up for it. And you know what? If something bad happens because of it, or things, go left, maybe that wasn't meant to be. Like, that's, and it's really a mindset shift, because the environment around you doesn't really change. And I would say up until, the past few years, I mean, we're starting to see more momentum and more acceptability, but there's still a lot of work to do. But, the environment doesn't change. What changes is your mindset. And for me, like, that probably happened maybe like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, where I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do me. And either you like it or you don't. Like a relationship, either you like me or you don't. But you know what, if you don't, that's okay. It's all good. I'm going to be joyous. But what I will do is go find someplace that will value me and that will like me, love me, whatever. So you just kind of make that choice. So I don't know if it was the same for you, Stacey, in that sense, in terms of, but it's freeing. It's freeing when you.
I became free when I faced my greatest adversity. So, like sometimes when you hit rock bottom, which I have, you're just like, I'm going to climb out of here and I'm going to be the best version of myself. And to your point, anyone who doesn't like it with good reason, bye, and I have seen that really pay dividends in my career, being authentic. And I
Yes.
feel like I love being at Chris because I'm weird. Like I am not your typical person, and I feel embraced there. And for me to be happy at work, I have got to be 100% authentic. Have you seen
I love it.
have you seen a return on your investment of self in that way?
Absolutely. And I think what's empowering for me, because I love what you just said. And I also, for those listening, I encourage people, like, sometimes we have to break some of the ways that we were taught, growing up or in our youth, to kind of get past some mental blocks or things that are challenges. But it's so empowering. And what I find is that when you're willing to open up more, when you're willing to kind of take some risks and be willing to risk it and say, like, if I say this or do this or operate in this way, there might be people who aren't for it. When you do that, you'd be surprised. I'm always surprised at how many people come up to me and say, or outwardly show, oh my gosh, I was feeling the same way, or I think the same thing, or I have a similar situation. And it's empowering, but it's also exciting to see, like, you're not the only one. But a lot of people hold themselves back because you're kind of put in a box, or you have, something holding you back, or you think that you won't be accepted if you operate in a certain way. So it's paid dividends, and for me, what I've loved about it is helped me establish deeper relationships, which I value like nobody's business. I'd rather have like a few really, really great relationships than like surface level with a million people.
It's authenticity and vulnerability, and especially in the workplace, is so contagious. And I feel like it's our responsibility as leaders to show that side, so that our team opens up and we create real connections, so we can actually understand what makes them tick and help drive business results. Like, it cannot be separated. The old school command and control management style is never going to work with the generations to come.
Absolutely. And I think that's exciting, actually.
I agree.
And I'm kind of like a mix. Like, I kind of grew up in like that, but like now I'm like, I don't know if I believe in all that. And I think for everybody out there, you have to find, again, it's hard to change the macro, but you can kind of change your mindset, and you can go and try to impact cultures. But if you feel like you're, I like to say, running up a down elevator, if it's not working, like, keep them, find a place where, you can make that impact and help to shift some of the cultures. But it's exciting because that's what I'm saying. I'm always inspired and excited by, like, when I see trends and see things change. It's some of the things I'm like, yes, it's about time. I'm older. You go make it happen, but I'll support you.
You said something the other day that has been lingering in my brain, and it made me feel so validated in my experience of life, which was, we were talking about fear. And you said, when I look at my calendar, there's typically something during the week that makes me feel nervous. Can you tell everyone what you were talking about? Because I thought that was key, and probably everyone could understand where you're coming from.
No, absolutely. It's interesting because I'm glad that was inspiring, and it kind of feels weird because the typical human nature is to feel comfortable, right? It's a good feeling. Like, nobody wants to, like, most people do not like conflict and want things to be, smooth sailing. But what I meant by that is, I'm a firm believer that it's the uncomfortable and challenging moments that really help you grow. And for me, as like I said, my career hasn't been linear. I've moved to different assignments, took on different challenges that maybe weren't in line, but maybe kind of veered off track a little bit. Sometimes I even think, oh, you should have moved on sooner instead of staying there. But then there's always something you get out of it. But when I say that, like, I won't say every day. Well, actually I will. Probably every day, definitely every week. There is something that there's always something that makes me nervous, whether it's a meeting, whether it's something I'm working on. And I actually like that. Like, if I were to be in working on something and nothing kind of made my stomach like a little nervous, or like made me be like, ooh, this could go left at any point in time. The wheels could fall off this at any moment. It would kind of become boring to me. And I also know that that's when I'm in a stagnant place and the growth isn't going to come. So it's almost like constantly challenging yourself, but in a good way. I don't think there's like we used to call them at bats. I don't think there's a time when I'm at bat, or like if it's an important presentation or doing something, that I'm not nervous beforehand, because that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. But it's actually a good thing, because I think it fuels you, and you start to become a little bit more comfortable with the nervousness. And then what it does is, over long term, you know, every day we're facing something we're probably afraid of, or probably like brings us anxiety, and it helps to give you the skill to like operate in the anxiety and in the fear, and to kind of push through it. And it's a thing you just do over time. It's not like you're going to all of a sudden just be like winning at life, like on a big obstacle, but it's the small little things. You garner more courage. You get a little bit more comfortable operating in the uncomfortable, and then it's better. But yeah, like pretty much every day, every week for sure, I'm like, ooh, I hope this goes good.
And I was like, oh, thank you for saying that, because I look at my calendar, I'm like, please make that go well. You know, like,
yes,
when you're challenging yourself, you can't help but feel that positive pain. And my colleague Gareth said to me the other day, he was like, from pain comes growth. And that's the only catalyst to change and improvement. I see that we're getting some questions.
It's a dichotomy. It's like, oh, who wants to go through pain? It's awful, but.
Right. And then, okay, last question in this realm, and then we'll get to the questions. We still have 5 minutes left. But so how do you balance that with not falling into the trap of imposter syndrome?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think, Stacey, that's the one where it's an overtime thing. Like, you have, like, as I'm kind of maybe speaking to people who are a little more junior in their career, not even a junior, like even now, it's like, you have to reflect back on when you were in a challenging situation, or when you didn't think you could do it, that you were able to do it, and remember that, and take that with you as you move to the next challenge and the next challenge. It's honestly having just a level of faith that, hey, I can do this. I did it before. This might be a new challenge, but it's almost like, you know, they say in the finance world, like, past history is not indicative of future results, but it kind of is. Like, if you've been doing it and doing it and doing it, even if it's a new challenge, you almost just have to pep talk yourself. It's not an easy thing. Totally. I mean, the imposter syndrome is absolutely real. I think everybody experiences it. And I think we just put a name to it. It's always been there. It's just no one ever had a fancy, like, theoretical name. Yeah. But like anything, the more you do something and get a little bit more comfortable in the fact that, like, hey, I have a history of, even if that was smaller, I did it. And then if I don't get it right, it's okay. I'll try again.
Sometimes you got to fake it.
Here's the thing, and you're gonna fail. Like, everybody is gonna fall.
Yeah.
Like, it's a given. Like, I'm a snowboarder, and I love snowboarding. And I tell anybody who wants to start it, be prepared to fail 100% of the time until it hits. And then when it hits, you'll get it. But you spend a year on your butt, because it's hard, you know, it's inherent. You're gonna fall down, but you get back up and you just kind of keep at it, and just remember. And I think this is really important, because I think it can get very stressful for all of us. Like, when you don't do well, and you put so much stock in that, and you dwell on it, and it makes you stressed or anxious and depressed. Like, you have to not associate who you are and your self-worth with something you did. That's just a thing. You know, it's just a project. It's just an assignment. It's just a life situation. It will get better. You can go on and, you know, and overcome and do better the next time. But it doesn't define you. It's not who you are. It's what you did.
Well said.
I'll stop there.
I'm that would be a good mic drop moment, but we do have questions.
Oh, great.
So, we have 2 minutes, so let's fly. The first question is, what have you seen as a best practice in collecting data from Gen Z?
Okay, that's a good one. To be honest, because of that cohort, and because there's so much in the digital and social realm, and Stacey, you and I talked about this a little bit. We didn't get into it as much now, but on the brands that I work on, you know, we are building our first party, and we buy a lot of, you know, external data, but we also do a lot of social listening as well, to really, and I think too, it's inherent of the beauty industry, because people are online and talking about, you know, their looks, or how they got them, or what the latest trend is. And I think as a brand in the beauty space, it is really important to kind of keep a pulse on what Gen Z or any cohort for that matter are talking about, what they're into, what do you see trending, what are the themes, so that as you're developing either your products or your communication or your business strategies, they're really tied into what's going on, because it's real time. It's, literally, it's funny. I would joke with family members. I will get a piece of content and immediately look at the comments because I want to see what people are chatting about. Like, it's just natural for me to go like, what are they saying? Ooh, is this good? Is this bad?
Yep.
So in addition to very curated media sources that are credible, I'm also looking at what people are saying, because that's also real. It's that consumer sentiment we talked about.
Yeah. Last one. This is a hard one. I feel like this is a hard one. We're talking about data. We're talking about results being obviously the outcome of sales. But so often in marketing, I'm giving a long-winded preface. So often in marketing, we're not using the point of sale data to dictate our strategy. Are you using real-time point of sale data to help with your activation?
So I'm curious who asked the question when they're saying real time, like immediately, like it's scanned and then I immediately know it, or versus syndicated data. But for the businesses I run, and I will say personally, I am obsessed with the sale, because that's a big metric of how I'm evaluating my business. So I'm looking at where it's selling at, how much, what's the velocity of it? How am I doing, per my point of distribution? Where am I growing versus not in terms of the kind of realm of the point of sale data. So it's definitely very important, completely. And like I said earlier, it has to be a blend of the two. You're looking at those financial metrics, and sales and distribution and pricing are super important, especially when you look at your competitive set. But then you also have to marry that with the consumer metrics and understanding your consumer, how they feel about your brand, what they think about the category, all of that together. But point of sale data, critical. And every brand I've worked on has bought a lot of it. We have a lot of data.
Melinda, you are a class act and hopefully a new friend. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me.
We're absolutely a new friend. Thank you so much, Daisy. It's been a pleasure.
For sure.
And thanks to the Brand Innovators team.
This was awesome. Such an amazing conversation.
Good.
Thank you, Sydney.
Have a great rest of your day, both of you, and I hope we continue it at some point. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney. I work on our content and community team with Ariel and Jamie. And so I'm just here to introduce our next wonderful speaker and moderator. We have Elizabeth Drury, the Chief Marketing Officer from Sperry, and then Tiffany Patet, the Director of Strategic Partnerships from Influential. So thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Sydney. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
Hi. Nice to see you. Thank you for having us.
No problem. Thank the Brand Innovators team for having me as well.
Yeah.
I fell short with the background yet again. I feel like I know, but you're holding it down for us. So thank you so much. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into this. Today's all about fashion and retail, and you've had a ton of experience. I did a little bit of digging already in the category. So if you don't mind, let's start by sharing with the audience a little bit about your background in this space and the role that you've taken on now at Sperry.
Sure. So I would say I haven't spent my whole career in the space, although I did have a job in college at the Gap. So you could say that sometimes you look back at those things and you're like, no, I was actually interested in this. I just didn't know at the time. But I had a little bit of a journey to get here. My first industry out of college was defense. So, radar systems and bombs and that kind of thing. And that was not a good fit for me at all. And I shortly realized that I love I love consumer focused businesses and thinking about what makes someone want to buy something. And I clearly had my own, category interest in the fashion world. So I ended up going to business school to really change careers. And after business school, I was a consultant. and then left and worked at Converse. So that really started my first, direct brand in the fashion space. I was at Converse for 7 years in strategy and marketing roles. And then I left and I joined Walmart to lead marketing for Walmart Fashion, which was very fun, very exciting, a big job, and a very energetic mission to change people's perception and make Walmart, a destination not just of apparel basics, but of fashion. I still shop Walmart Fashion today. I forget you can buy clothes at other places. And then I came to Sperry as CMO a year ago, just over a year ago, and was so excited to be back on the brand side. And really apply, everything I learned from an e-com standpoint at Walmart, but back on the brand side and in the footwear space, where I had spent a lot of time previously. So I love it. I think it's a ton of fun, and it's something that certainly keeps me excited to come to work every day.
That's awesome to hear. I always love when, leadership CMOs come from the brand side and have a wealth of experience, tapping into both working with multiple brands and really getting like hands-on. I mean, extremely hands-on in your case, working at the Gap even early on.
Right.
So that's awesome experience. I want to hear a little bit more about your role now and some of the things that you're focusing on from a marketing standpoint. Fashion retail definitely might have had some adjustments as far as like marketing initiatives are concerned over the last couple of years. So what is Sperry focused on right now?
So, we've certainly had an interesting couple of years. At Walmart, we sold toilet paper, so things were kind of okay. And here, it's a different story. And I think we've seen what's really nice is we've seen a lot of our market share come back, over the past year. So we had a really good growth year last year. The pandemic was really tough. When we make a lot of shoes that are casual, but we make a lot of shoes that people wear to go to work. And so that's always a challenge. But we've really been focused over the past year at resetting the brand, which is actually really, really exciting to be a part of that journey. So rewriting, what's our positioning? What do we stand for? We just created a brand purpose platform so we could really become more purpose driven and become more of a lifestyle brand. So we did a lot of that strategic foundational work this year, on top of making great shoes and just trying to sell the shoes too. So it's sort of multi-pronged, a lot of work at the brand level, and then, bringing some great innovative product stories to life as well.
That's awesome to hear. I love a reset. I think all of us are having our own reset moment in general, working from home or, leaning into, storytelling more. I know brands are doing that more and more often. What would you say is sort of like your primary maybe marketing funnel right now, or how are you prioritizing, digital versus out of home perhaps, or tell us a little bit about that.
So we've actually made a pretty big shift in our business and in our model, our media model. So last year was the result of a number of years of shift of spending a lot of money in performance marketing to drive sales on Sperry.com, and Sperry.com has become a very large percentage of our distribution. Footwear historically was very wholesale driven, and we still sell to Nordstrom and Macy's and DSW and all those places. But, Sperry.com became a bigger part and absorbed a lot more of the dollars. But what we saw was we had stopped making inroads on brand awareness and some of the brand health metrics because we weren't really investing in, introducing our brand to new consumers, to younger consumers, in a way that was, very brand building and brand accretive. Again, we marketed stories, products, but not really the brand. So this year we're flipping the switch a bit, which is very exciting. And we're investing in the top of the funnel, certainly a lot more than in the past few years. So we are launching next week a brand campaign, which is really exciting, that will run on connected TV and in YouTube. And then, and then we still have great, consideration media going, and as well as performance marketing. Sperry.com is still really important to us, but we will have much more of a full funnel approach this year, which is really, really exciting. And hopefully we'll be driving that brand awareness that we're looking to do.
That's awesome. I mean, I hear next week, and I don't want you to give anything away, but it sounds like Super Bowl, but I'm not sure. So
I can preview it a little bit. So our campaign is called Make Waves. So Sperry started out as it was founded by an inventor who was literally tried to prevent himself from slipping off the deck of his boat. And he was on the boat with his dog. He slipped on the deck. The dog didn't slip. He looked at the dog's paws and saw like the traction in the dog's paws grooves, and then created that and built that into the outsole as a traction system. So invented the CVO, which is a sneaker that's sort of like a basic construction sneaker in 1935, and then the boat shoe shortly followed. So that's the history. So we're a brand that's born on the water, and we've done a lot of, again, that foundational work around, how do we unlock that emotional connection that people have on the water, and not just be a brand that you sort of think of when you think of fancy yachts. Like that's like what we do, you look at a lot of sort of who has picked up the brand over the years, and what's kind of become a defining aspect of the brand. And, JFK wore the brand, Paul Newman wore the brand, but you sort of, at its worst, you have that image of, lame old white men on their yachts. And like, that's not a great image to have for the brand. And so again, we did a lot of the work to say, we want to reposition the brand and really unlock the joy of the water in a way that's very accessible and relatable and fun. And so Make Waves is a campaign that really speaks to, how can we be active, be purpose-driven, make a difference, make our own path. How do we create a campaign that feels really relatable for consumers? There's something that really taps into that YOLO. Our mission is to inspire the world to raise their sales and live their life fully. So like, how do you make the most of every day? And so that's what the campaign is about. It's called Make Waves. We just shot it a few weeks ago in LA. Super fun. Lots of, expected things of people enjoying themselves, on the beach, but then also people at a pool, and people in different contexts, younger people having fun in different contexts that will hopefully bring that to life. So very excited for that.
That's super exciting. I love that you're leaning into this, like, travel feeling. It's definitely appropriate. We all need it. So please, I'm super excited to, have a form of escapism in looking at that marketing campaign. You mentioned it shot in LA. I'm curious to know, what is creative for you guys like right now? What does that process look like? Are teams working remotely? It sounds like you're definitely doing like outdoor shooting and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a brief period of time, I would say, the spring of 2020, nobody was shooting. So I was at Walmart at that time, and we were just having influencers create content for us and really leveraging that. We still leverage a lot of influencer content, but the shoots are happening. There's a lot of testing. There's a lot of extra cost to provide COVID safety officers and masks and testing day of and whatnot. So, we did it. We did the rapid test before we got there. We did a PCR test, and then had our temperature checked. And I mean, it went well, and nobody got sick, which is great. So I would say, it's doable, but there's a little bit of like the cross your fingers. And I was going on that trip, and I was like, if I got sick, it might be okay. But like, if our director got sick, or like our cast, like, that's not great. So, you have to be nimble because you never know. And I think when we first started planning it, it was before Omicron became as crazy as it was. But I mean, we sort of did it in the heart of it. And we I don't know, we got away with it safely, which was good, but we're definitely shooting, and working around it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I mean, we're all, it looks, even I live in LA, so I walk outside and I see, people filming and
Yeah.
COVID stations everywhere still. So people are
Yeah.
leaning into it a little bit. Crews might be a little bit more spread out, taking up a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
more of the street than normal, but that's totally
And
fair.
we were masked. I mean, we were masked even outside. You know, we had. I think we were very respectful to, you know, to safety and the protocols. And actually, the production company required everyone on set to have been vaccinated. You know, which is also interesting. And you know, and good in my opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You touched on it already a little bit in talking about some of the things that you've done on the social front. Influencers have been part of the fold. Tell us about what those strategies have looked like. How are they used? Everything like that.
So, you know, influencers are very important in fashion and beauty. I'm sure there's not one speaker who is saying to the contrary. So this year we did something new for the brand, which I thought worked out very, very well, which was we identified. So part of our repositioning is also, you know, how do we make our brand seem really relevant in fashion from a styling perspective? And so for Sperry, you know, we have these historic New England roots. We're a preppy brand, but guess what? Prep is happening. Modern prep is very much in fashion. So we've been doing a lot of things to, you know, style ourselves in a way that sort of pays off that modern prep. It's not the old stodgy prep. It's like cool prep. And, you know, and working with stylists and other brands and partners to do so. So we identified a number of influencers that we felt like really paid off the aesthetic that we were going for. And we contracted with them for the year. And they were really, you know, they had, you know, varying levels of reach and following, but we really used them primarily for content because we really selected them for content. And, you know, and in doing so, we could get, you know, a diverse representation and geographically diverse. And, you know, we could hit on a number of efforts that we were trying to make and rely on them for as sort of a secondary content generation for us. And that worked very, very well. I think this year, we will also, and we did it last year too, but we will sort of separate the influencers that we want for content that we sort of call our brand ambassadors. And then, you know, we will also do direct product campaigns too. We've been dabbling in TikTok a bit, and I think we'll continue to do, you know, we've seen some success there, so we'll continue to do some TikTok campaigns, but then also just, you know, micro influencer campaigns to tell product stories too. So yeah, the influencers can't be more important.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to lean into or ask more about TikTok, and that's awesome that you guys are playing in that space. I know another space that Sperry traditionally has done is live sort of shopping, like live TV, I want to say, on traditional television. Is that something even of interest on social for you guys right now? And have you tapped into that?
We've experimented a bit. So we've over the past couple of years, we were working with John Legend as a global brand ambassador. And so we launched a product collaboration with him this fall, and we did a live streaming with him. We also did a live streaming actually earlier this summer with Color Me Courtney, who's an influencer who represented another one of our campaigns. And I would say they were fun for the handful of us that were on them, but they were not that effective. I don't think. You know, they didn't really result much in purchases, and not as many people were on them as we would have wanted. So yeah. I don't know, the live streaming, you know, I feel like we tried it a couple of times, and maybe there's an opportunity to do it again with the right person or on the right program. But in my experience, not great.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I know fashion is one of the first, at least the category is one of the first that these platforms are really reaching out to brands to try it. So it's super interesting to hear that. And I'm sure we'll get learnings along the way, and then we can sort of, you know, understand what's being favored on these platforms and things like that. Tell us a little bit about on the personal level. Did you think that you'd be where you are right now based on where you were and what you studied back in school?
Oh,
I know you took on a couple of different roles.
yeah, no, I mean, it's funny, like things always make sense if you look back, right? Sort of like the Gap example. I mean, on the one hand, like I used to literally play advertising with my younger sister. Like I would make her my secretary and like pretend to write ads for shampoo commercials. Like that was how I played as a young child. So like, yes, it makes sense that this is where I am now. But that said, I really liked math and my dad was like, you should study computer science. And I listened to him and I sort of had a very roundabout path to where I am. And then the other thing is, I always struggled with like, do I want to do marketing itself, or do I just want to work in a consumer oriented company? And I spent 5 years at Converse doing strategy, and I loved every minute of it. Like, how do you think about how to grow the brand in many different ways? And so it didn't need to be marketing that satisfied me at that time, but I just kept coming back to it. Because ultimately, to me, it's that closest to the consumer connection. It's really driving home, trying to get to capture someone's attention and to capture their hearts and minds. So, it did take a bit. It took a bit to get there, but I did, and the transition was tough. I had to make it, a very deliberate transition. I had support at Converse. From leadership to move from strategy to marketing. And I swear it took going on maternity leave and coming back and having my boss say she's not coming back to this job. So like, what else do you have for her? So that was hard, but I think it's one of those stories of, obviously the ideal is like, what you want to be when you grow up and then you pursue it. Right. And there have been many times when I'm like, oh, I should have, started out doing this, or why didn't I do that? But I think you ultimately get where you want with effort, right? With persistence and effort. And so I would say, setting your own path, and setting yourself up to get there is really important whenever you figure out what that path is.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's always nice to hear that, you may not know what you want to do and you don't know what you don't know. And you just kind of have to like lean into your intuition and really, let your gut kind of help you along the way. That's good to hear. What I'm hearing and everything you're saying too, is it comes back to consumers. And that makes me also think about, you've done a lot of like research in your time, or at least listened to a lot of the research out there, whether it's in your specific category or as a whole when it comes to marketing. What kinds of research matter to you now in this role, and what's been valuable for you?
Yeah. I'm glad that you asked that. So we with this brand work that we did, we looked at the consumer that we target. We target a consumer that we call the anchored optimist. So it's someone who cares about style, but also has this connection to water, and that really distinguishes the brand. And the team, and it had been, I would say, a few years since the team had done like proper qualitative research on our target consumer. And so we realized very, very quickly that we needed to do it. So we kicked off qualitative research with representative anchored optimists, around the world, and in our target age range. And it was so helpful. And one of the things that we realized was that being near water is such an amazing emotional unlock. And so there were these themes that came up for people in terms of how they feel when they're by the water. And people feel either, re-energized, like I want to go on the water and be active. And we're actually launching a Sperry Sport line with sort of performance water shoes next month if it arrives in time. And so like that sort of taps into that state of mind. Then there's the reconnect state of mind. Like I go to the water, I go to the beach, I go to the pool to see my friends and to be with my family and to sort of have those shared experiences. And then there's the rediscover. Like I go to the water because it makes me feel calm and zen, and like we are one with water and we are made of water and like water is powerful. And so there's sort of that aspect too. And it was amazing, first of all, just to align everybody, really, frankly, the organization, against that mindset of, if our brand promise can unlock those feelings of being by the water, then how do we tap into that? And then we literally took that, onto our shoot, where we had, these kids, and they were playing, they were being fun. And my creative director was like, we need someone looking out into this, like, we need that rediscover, that Zen moment. And we have it. Like we got great content and we put it into the spot. And we know that, that there are lots of different angles and lots of ways to plan, but, having that understanding of the consumer has been so helpful. So I think it's made us really excited to pursue more, and we can get very tactical, obviously, from a product standpoint. We do that here and there. But on my mind, I'm already thinking for next year, what would be the next level, but it was very, very worthwhile to do that research.
That's awesome. Finally, qualitative research at its finest.
I know.
All about numbers for sure, but I love that. I mean, it's so helpful, I'm sure, to even your creative team.
Oh, yes. Like. Yeah.
That's amazing. Have you explored customer? I'm diving into some of these questions as we go through it. Have you explored customer loyalty programs or consumer loyalty?
Well, as I was saying, Sperry.com is quite a focus. So we do have, we have, I would say we have goals to build our database. That's really important. And sort of building your database then lends itself to other loyalty programs. I don't know that we have like best in class loyalty programs already developed, but it's definitely a goal to have a very, engaged audience. And we do, we are able to, within our email database segment, the, more frequent shoppers, and we certainly tap into them for things. We actually just changed our logo, and it's live today. And we tapped into our loyal customers to do a quick check. That's another piece of research we did. Like, you don't have to love this new logo, but we just want to make sure it doesn't make you angry. It's one of those kind of, like, we knew we liked it and we wanted to go with it. We just wanted to make sure we didn't have any red flags. And the loyal customers, to my surprise, because I'm a purist when it comes to logos, and I was very nervous to change ours. And to my surprise, the loyal customers preferred the new one. So that was really great. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's some of the things that we're doing.
I think it does. For one, you're speaking to your customers is what you unveiled in saying that. And you're not the first to have like done something new and actually like asked your customers for it, even though, for their opinions, it's a risky thing and maybe even scary, but it sounds like it definitely paid off. So like kudos to you guys for even thinking about that. There's more questions flying in. Our podcast, part of your top level funnel plans.
Literally had a podcast meeting this week, but actually it's because our head of sales wants to create our own podcast. So it's a little bit of a different. He's really energized and really making the brand a lifestyle brand too. We did one this past year. We did it. We participated in a menswear podcast. So I would say, from like a creating brand awareness, I still am a believer, and I don't know that this is a widespread point of view, but in fashion, you want to see it. So I struggle a little bit with audio. Because I think as part of sort of introducing, a new Sperry to a new consumer, you want to see what it looks like on, and, styling is important and all that. And you don't really get that from a podcast, but, there are ways to do it. And so, if this menswear podcast, speaks to our brand a lot and sort of comes with that level of credibility, then, then that works. I think we have talked a lot about what does Sperry sound like? So, like ocean sounds, and from the music standpoint, we're starting to have more of those conversations. And so, if there was some sort of sonic logo or something, would we then be more open to audio type, advertising podcasts and otherwise? So I think we'll look at it, but we're sort of making a bet on high impact video as our key upper funnel investment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I feel like I might have been a creative person in a past life. You sparked an idea that I'm going to share with you after
Oh,
this.
please.
I'm sending
Please
from
do.
TikTok. I'm making a note to myself. Okay.
Okay, good.
Could be cool audio. Anyways. Okay. Do you handle all marketing and advertising in-house? Someone's asking.
We work with a creative agency as a key partner. I would say more on the strategic side. So they do a lot of creative concepting for us. We worked hand in hand with them on our Make Waves spot. So I was out there with my creative director and the creative director from the agency. So they've been an excellent partner. So I guess the answer is no. But we do, most else we do in-house. So we certainly do quite a lot in-house, but we do use them a lot for the more strategic work. And they were critical with some of the repositioning work that we just completed. So it's a mix.
The follow-up to that is if you can share a little bit about your SEO and page strategy.
So I mean, it's sort of standard ecom performance marketing stuff. And again, it sort of comes back to the balance of how do you, how much of your sales are you willing to invest in that to drive .com growth? And it's not about search or SEO, it's more about what's the balance across channels to achieve your traffic and ROAS targets. So, I haven't really drilled in that specifically to those two, other than trying to take more money and move it up the funnel.
Awesome answer.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell me from a personal standpoint, or at least I'm asking personally and curious, have you been interested ever in co-branded opportunities, and what kinds of categories would make the most sense for Sperry?
Yeah, so we do a good amount of collaborations. Collaborations, especially in the footwear space, are very big and very important to drive hype and interest. And they're amazing for a lot of reasons. You can borrow equity from another brand. You can produce product that distorts your brand in a way, and you create something that you would never have created otherwise. Like we did a collaboration with Rebecca Minkoff this fall, and we have these, Sperry sneakers with like stud or boat shoes with studs, which is kind of fun. So oftentimes they give you, they just sort of stretch you in a way where you wouldn't be, and that's what makes them special. And then they have different audiences. And so it's a way to get in front of new and different people. So we do really believe in collaborations, and we have a pretty good strategy. We have a bunch of collaborations coming up this year too. So in terms of who we look for, it really varies, but it's more like, can we find a partner that fits those three things or some combination of? So who's their audience? And what kind of credibility would they bring, and is there some sort of oomph factor where it's like 1 + 1 = 3? Sperry's over here and the other one's over here, but together we can do some really special and cool things. And we collaborate with fashion brands, and we also collaborate with other properties. So we did one this summer that sold out with the Netflix Outer Banks show. And that show, is so native to our brand. They're on the water, they're on boats, and it did really, really well because there was a great fan base of the show to tap into. So that was a very, a very successful one. So we've got some good ones in the pipeline.
I love that. It makes me think of, I don't know if there was one attached to that collaboration, but experiential stuff and like event-based opportunities. Are you guys a little bit?
Yeah. A little bit. So we did a collaboration also last summer with Good Humor and Popsicle. So we made like ice cream shoes, which were very, very cute. And so we did an ice cream truck activation. We called our ice cream truck Drippy Kicks. And we had the Drippy Tricks truck go to, I forget, maybe like 10 stops from New York up to Maine. And it was great. I think experiential activations are a lot of fun. It's always a question of how you can scale them. And we capture content, we shared it on social, we share it on our site. And I think it was a great way to celebrate that collaboration in particular. We gave out a lot of ice cream bars, which was fun. My kids liked that. They got away with getting more than one each. So, this year, I think this year it's on our radar. We'll certainly do events. we end up doing a lot of events with influencers or sort of with the influential as a way to generate, heat with the tastemakers. It's a little bit less experiential though. But we'll see. We've got one collaboration this summer that we're thinking about doing something more experiential.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like that is the time too, like spring, summer, people are,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, I don't know about festival season, like who really knows?
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that people are really curious about and excited about for the most part.
Right.
What are some things you are watching, reading, or listening to right now?
Ooh,
And that can be anything. Yeah.
Something specific. I mean, I don't know. I'm on Instagram all the time. I try to be on TikTok. We're doing we launched a sock debate today, which is a campaign to have some fun with the boat shoe in the winter. So you can either be on team sock or team no sock. So in preparation for that campaign, we looked at like sort of plugging into a lot of different memes and different sort of cultural things that are happening. So we're coming out with some of that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I try to follow the news. Like I don't know that I have one great source. But maybe I'll come up with something later.
Did you say you were based in LA?
I'm based in Boston, actually.
Okay, so are you dealing with the cold? You're probably
yes.
I was like, that's
yes to dealing with the cold, dealing with it. Yeah,
with the news as it relates to going outside. I get it.
Yes, and the good news is we make a lot of boots, so inclement weather is good for business, but it stinks for my snow plow budget.
Yeah, Sperry all year round. I love that. Give me some of your predictions for the fashion and retail category this year. What do you predict?
There's one that we haven't talked about at all. It's not really a prediction, but one huge trend, which is the metaverse, and something that we're talking about a lot and don't have a plan with yet, because it's really like fast moving and tricky and requires a lot of investment. But we have our eye on it. And we're talking about making a plan. And my team has had some interesting ideas too. So that feels both exciting and also very overwhelming. But if you look at any business of fashion is one thing I follow. So to answer your last question, I guess I do have a couple of things. They are posting about the metaverse all the time. So that's a good, I would say, a good resource. And they have a podcast. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the metaverse everywhere, but I found their content to be quite strong. So I think that's one to watch for sure, and brands are entering via gaming experiences, like digital worlds that they're creating. There's digital product, which is an option, and an opportunity. And then there's NFTs, which is another opportunity. So when we did the Rebecca Minkoff collaboration, instead of doing a proper fashion show in September, she actually had NFTs as assets that was part of her presentation. So I think there's lots of ways in, and yeah, we'll see what we get to this year.
Yeah, I mean, someone's already asking if you're creating any or have any plans and how would that happen? I mean, you're right. Fashion is definitely a space that brands are playing into it. And then obviously there's, influencers in the metaverse as well that we can lean into. What would you say? What would your response be to that?
I mean, we are talking about it. I think we had an idea to buy an NFT, which would have been we would have been buying into like a cultural conversation and a very, very engaged audience. And it had too many holes to poke, and it was too sort of like confusing, and we didn't do it. And now the value of them have gone up so much, so we wouldn't do it anymore. But that was do you buy your way in versus like, do you create, like if we have our IP and we have a brand, should we be creating something, but you want to do it very purposefully, you don't want to dabble. So it's all about having, the right comprehensive strategy. I do think digital product, it's something that we're talking about in order to protect our IP in the metaverse. You hear about like Balenciaga and the Birkin bag and you know, what's going to happen with that. Like, I think there is a lot of, you do see a lot of people doing, you know, filing things to protect their infrastructure in the metaverse. So that's one where we could probably do something. And digital product is a really interesting opportunity to people like having skins and having, you know, stuff for their avatars, if you will, to wear. So I'm probably not talking with authority at all because I feel like I'm learning about it every day. But anyway, that's sort of where our heads are at. But I'm sort of open. I think we need to get some help to create the right strategy, and then we'll see. But it's certainly worth exploring.
No, I mean, I think that's a perfect answer. We're all, I guess, the phrase is like building this ship, since we're talking boats, building this ship as we're sailing it. So,
we really like a good sea pun.
Leaning into it. So yeah, I think that's fair to say. You want it to be authentic. You want it to be purposeful. You're not just going to do it because everyone else is at this moment. Super smart. Someone's asking, how are you making the brand a little bit more attractive to Gen Z? Is that something you guys are thinking about?
Yes. That question. I mean, so we part of it is the brand campaign that we're coming out with. You know, we're featuring Gen Z, we're targeting Gen Z with that, and hopefully it's content that will really resonate with them. I think, you know, another part is influencers and is almost like casualizing our brand and our copy and sort of how we engage. And then I had one fleeting thought now. It'll come back to me.
Influencers.
Oh, and the brand purpose. Okay, 1 minute on the brand purpose. I'm like, it's something big, but I forgot. Okay. So, you know, Gen Z is very purpose driven, right? More so than any other generation. And we know that we want to be, thank you for the LOL. We know that we want to be, you know, and we want to be more of a lifestyle brand, and we want to create that want for the brand and not just our amazing shoes. So, so our purpose is also very tied to the core of the brand. So we're calling it all for water, water for all. So all for water is, you know, water is our playground, and we care about sustaining our waterways. And so we will continue to make, every season we're committed to making more of the line sustainable, or more sustainable rather. So we have a collection that we call Seed Cycled, which has, you know, at least 50% recycled materials in it. And we have lots of goals in terms of reducing water usage and that kind of thing. And then we're trying to also, you know, make that a bigger part of our, of what we stand for as a company and our culture and that kind of thing. So we've got a work stream on that. Water for all is how we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we make water and the fun on the water accessible to everybody? And we're still figuring out what that plan would be and how we could be helpful, because we really like the idea of making a difference and serving consumers. And, you know, and those two things feel really nice because they're connected, and they speak to, you know, the cultural zeitgeist and what matters to people, particularly younger people. So we will be creating a strategy against both of those this year. Water for all, we're looking to activate this summer by partnering probably with some, we've already talked to a number of people, organizations that are already making these efforts. And actually one of the kids that we featured in our brand video has an organization that, you know, that's an LA-based surfing organization that's really trying to, you know, have more diverse people out on the water. So
yeah, that's awesome to hear. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel like it's super helpful, and I'm a huge fan of your sea puns.
This has been so amazing, both of you. Thank you both so much for taking the time, and this conversation was awesome.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having Tiffany. Tiffany, let me know your idea. Look me up.
I am. I'm going to send you all my TikTok ideas. Okay.
All right. Thanks,
Bye,
guys. Bye.
Thank you both. So that wraps it up for the end of our day. Thank you everyone for joining us and for tuning in. Huge shout out to our speakers, our sponsors, and our audience. Be sure to check out the Brand Innovators website to learn about our upcoming events. And I hope everyone has a great day.